Anyways, we'll proceed with the session. So over to you, sir, Dr. Anand.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. I want to welcome on stage Elia to make the first presentation. Her title is Governance and Ethics in Sport Development, Applying Principles of Good Governance and the Impact of Sport Stakeholders. So I will allow each presenter 30 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A for 10 minutes. With 5 minutes to go, I will just show you that you have 5 minutes.
Hello everyone, good morning again. Good morning. So, thank you, Professor, for the introduction. I'm just going to talk briefly today about the topic of governance and ethics in sport governance, and applying principles of good governance and the impact of sport stakeholders. I'm not sure how it goes with the slides. There we go. So the purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate the impact of globalization and international organization on sport governance, to show the plurality of sport stakeholders and sport interests, and to discuss the necessity for and impact of good governance in sport. Well, as you know, the governance of sport has evolved. It has transitioned from centralized state-led models to more decentralized multi-actor frameworks that incorporate international federations, state actors, private stakeholders, and regulatory bodies. This presentation examines the shifting landscape of sport governance, emphasizing the interplay between structural reforms, ethical considerations, and stakeholder engagement. The need for ethical governance has been reinforced by high-profile corruption scandals within organizations such as FIFA and IAF, now World Athletics, which have exposed systemic weaknesses in transparency and oversight. In response, international institutions, including the International Olympic Committee and UNESCO, have introduced governance reforms to enhance integrity, accountability, and asset representation, among others. Well, a definition of governance, as we know, there are many definitions of governance. This is a working term. So governance in its broadest sense refers to the processes, structures, and mechanisms through which authority is exercised, decisions are made, and policies are implemented within a given domain. Unlike government, which implies centralized state control, governance encompasses a wider range of actors, including non-state organizations, intergovernmental bodies, private entities, and civil society. In the context of sport, governance has traditionally been associated with the structures and regulations set by international federations. Of course, it's not the International Olympic Committee and International Federation. I'm sorry, there was a mistake there. Regulations set by International Olympic Committee and international federations such as FIFA, which long operated as autonomous governing authorities with global influence. Well, as I said already, governance in sport is not a static concept. For example, I have distinguished between traditional governance, which is hierarchical and institutionally centralized, and modern governance, global governance, which reflects a multi-actor approach involving governments, corporations, and transnational regulatory bodies. I'm going to talk more about it in a while. This evolution has been shaped by globalization as political, economic, and technological changes have increased the complexity of decision-making and challenged the authority of traditional sport governing bodies. As a result, governance today involves not only stakeholders and policies, but also considerations of transparency, accountability, and legitimacy. A definition of global sport governance is the plethora of actors that participate in the contemporary international sport-related policy making and implementation system as a result of globalization. As we know, globalization is a process that has led to a growing network of political, economic, cultural, and social interdependencies which bring people together. In the case of sport, we witness a variety of actors or stakeholders with interest in modern sport of diverse nature. These new political actors have emerged in world sport, which assert some kind of authority to all aspects of producing and consuming sport, as well as to significant political and socio-economical aspects related to this process, such as media rights, mobility of athletes, protection of minor and youth, doping, and other threats to sport. So, as we said, the main governing body, traditional governing body for sport, but also in the framework of the modern global sport governance, is the IOC, International Olympic Committee. So the IOC is a global sport organization, which is defined as a supreme organ of governance in sport, whose authority is global. Its role entails the following. A GSO has lawmaking, monitoring, and coordination of global national developments within sport, development and governance of athletes within sport, engagement and arbitration of disputes, organization of events and competitions, and maintenance of relationships with governance, regulatory authorities, commercial entities, and affiliated bodies. And that, of course, as you see, reflects the international federations. When we talk about traditional global sport governance, we talk about a process that is established on the structures and activity of the global sport governing bodies of the Olympic movement, because of its nature and role, as well as its capacity to transcend national boundaries. The activity of the Olympic movement and its partners affect directly or indirectly the lives of millions of people around the globe. In this framework, the IOC has the role of government. As an umbrella organization, it has been functioning as the regulatory formal authority in the field of global sport. Its power and authority derives from a number of social sources and practices, and conservative and well-structured style of operation, and worldwide recognition in the field of sport. So the Olympic governance entails International Olympic Committee, members National Olympic Committees, the national federations, members national federations, and the organizing committees for the Olympic Games. I'm sure that you all know the mission of the IOC, so I'm not just going to talk more about it. Well, the basic idea, of course, is that the IOC is the owner of the Olympic Games. So international federations, again, we see we have the international federations that govern the sport at a global level. They ensure the promotion and development of sport and the development of the athletes who practice it at all levels. During the Olympic Games, the IFs are responsible for the practical organization of the sport events on the program. All the technical aspects of a sport are their responsibility: rules, equipment, venues, judging, etc. International federations like World Athletics, for example, also conduct in and out of competition track testing. And organizing committees for the Olympic Games, they're formed after a city receives the bid to host the Games, developed to manage one event at a time, and their mission is to reflect the ideals of Olympic movement, to host the best, to be the best, and show the world the best Olympic Games ever. And this was a description of the traditional sport governance, and now we see now how nowadays we have the modern global sport governance, which is defined. It comprises a variety of actors, such as intergovernmental organizations, United Nations, Council of Europe, European Union, and UNESCO, multinational companies, sport interests, such as professional leagues and athletes and sport-related lobbies, other NGOs, and new regulators, the sport regimes, as we call, which is, of course, anti-doping, WADA, and sport law, CAS. A few things just a small summary of how each one of these actors contribute to global sport governance. So we have first international intergovernmental organizations, first United Nations. Sport officially was introduced as a policy tool in the UN agenda since the beginning of the new millennium to help achieve the Millennium Development Goals and later the SDGs. The United Nations, as an autonomous actor, uses its network, budget, and institutional autonomy to promote through sport social development worldwide, most of the time in cooperation with the IOC and other governing bodies. European Union. The EU decisions have forced sport governing bodies to change the rules of the game, started with the Bosman ruling, I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Since the ratification of the Lisbon Treaty in 2009, sport is included as a policy area in the European policy making, soft tool. Council of Europe, it was the first intergovernmental organization to show interest in sport. It has significant social sport-related activity. And here we have to include a number of regional intergovernmental organizations that have included sport in their policy-making agenda as means to enhance a healthier lifestyle and promote regional cooperation, such as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the Cooperation Council for Arab States of the Gulf. Transnational corporations as a very significant factor in modern global sport governance. They play a significant role through their control over sport-related technologies, as well as the sponsorship of sport events, organizations, and athletes, and a variety of organization and management sport issues, such as ticketing, merchandising, corporate social responsibility, etc. We have media corporations and organizations. I believe we should always make a special reference to this because sport relies heavily on media for various financial and social reasons, and also contributes to the development of shared systems of understanding among nations. Another significant modern global sport governing factor is the modern regulators of sport, which were created as a result of increasing demands for regulation of world sport, Court for Arbitration of Sport, and World Anti-Doping Agency. And we also have a significant number of civil society associations, sport-related lobbies and experts that are linked in some cases with the activity of IGOs in the field of sport. For example, in the framework of the MDGs and then SDGs, and in the framework of European sport-related policy making and implementation. Just as an example, the white paper for sport and sport lobbies are very much involved in European policy making processes. Sport-related experts are included in the IOC governance and EU governance. So this was the framework, So this was the framework of modern global sport governance, which is actually includes, of course, the traditional sport governance, right? So it is in addition to the traditional sport governance, we have all these new modern sport governing factors. So this is basically what I call modern global sport governance, a combination of traditional sport governance and the new sport governing factors. In this context, we can say that governance transcends administrative oversight, and it involves embedding ethical principles that champion integrity, fairness, and inclusivity within sporting organizations and communities. So what do we mean with good governance that we tend to talk a lot about? It refers to principles including accountability, integrity, and stakeholder representation that have become central to normative frameworks endorsed by international bodies such as IOC and UNESCO. The application of these principles, and I take these two examples because the one is from the traditional sport governing bodies and the other one is one of the new factors, let's say. So the application of these principles vary considerably across regions and organizational tiers, underscoring the challenges of aligning global standards with local realities. Ethical considerations in sport governance encompass a broad spectrum, ranging from anti-corruption efforts and equitable resource distribution to safeguarding athletes' welfare. Sports governance operates at the intersection of ethical imperatives and practical consideration. As the scale and complexity of sporting events continue to expand, three interrelated principles have become indispensable for maintaining integrity, fairness, and stakeholder trust. A, transparency. For example, we need clear rules for conduct and the open management of financial resources. B, accountability, obliging sport organizations to answer to both internal and external stakeholders. And 3, inclusivity, ensuring that diverse perspectives are incorporated into decision-making processes. So, as we see, while governance in sport has evolved, there are still significant challenges that remain in ensuring accountability, ethical leadership, and inclusive decision-making. We do have many reforms in the field of governance. I'm not going to talk specifically about them, but in a general framework, you know that a lot of sport governing bodies have introduced reforms in this field. We still, of course, have to deal with many challenges there as well. We have diversity in decision making still. For example, the IOC guidance of at least 30% representation for women in leadership remains unmet across many national Olympic committees. We have monitoring and evaluating or learning. So there have been efforts. There are efforts to help. There are attempts that have been made, and there are many initiatives that have been taken to help sport governing bodies and the sport world see their performance in the above fields. So one noteworthy example is a sport governance observer developed through collaborations like the Play the Game and the Danish Institute for Sport Studies. And this framework relies on clear indicators covering transparency, accountability, and democratic processes to help sport bodies pinpoint their strengths and weaknesses. And here we have an example of reform, the Olympic governance. The IOC has used transparency, numerous speeches and various documents published, access to archives and good governance, as well as sustainability and integrity to ensure its continuity. It has made significant changes over the last 2 decades in many areas of Olympic governance, including the following: marketing, management, the Olympic program, gender equality and transparency. The creation of regulatory sport authorities, such as WADA and CAS, has promoted Olympic legitimacy. The establishment of new commissions in the IOC framework, such as the Gender Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Commission. I have this noted there. I'm very interested in that commission, aims to promote the construction of a better world for sport. And the IOC claims that the basic universal principles of good governance of the Olympic and sports movement, in particular transparency, responsibility, and accountability, must be respected by all Olympic constituents. So just a few comments regarding the future of sport governance and ethics in sport development. There is an important number of new participants in the global sport governance scheme that challenge the sovereignty and have challenged the sovereignty of sport institutions. Yet it seems that the political feasibility of the former in the framework of sport governance relies mostly to the battle of governance within the Olympic governing factors and less to the potential to formally challenge the hierarchy. The inclusions of new actors and the reform of old actors safeguard the sustainability of the Olympic governance scheme. The future of sport governance is being shaped by rapid technological advancements, shifting social priorities, and increasing demands for transparency and accountability. As digital tools like blockchain and AI offer new ways to enhance financial oversight and decision-making, sport organizations are also being called upon to take a stronger stance on issues like sustainability, athlete advocacy, and diversity in leadership. Governance is no longer just about regulations. It's about trust, fostering ethical responsibility, and ensuring that sport remains a force for positive change. So, cooperation with modern sport governing factors ensures recognition of the International Olympic Committee in particular and Olympic movement in general. Contribution to the tackle of universal challenges such as environmental sustainability and inclusivity promotes and strengthens the position of the Olympic movement in the global landscape. The increase of the Olympic movement credibility and legitimacy safeguards endurance and continuity of Olympic governance in the framework of global sport governance. Future of governance in sport will depend on its ability to adapt to emerging challenges while maintaining ethical integrity, strengthening transparency and accountability through independent oversight, stakeholder-driven governance, and ethical leadership will be critical to ensuring credibility and public trust. By embedding the above principles into governance frameworks, sport can continue to serve as a vehicle for social progress, institutional integrity, and global development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very
I
much,
was in
Ilya,
time, right?
for your presentation, which was done in 20 minutes.
There you are.
Right? So your presentation was very insightful in dealing with a very important topic, governance. You know, governance not only in sport, but governance is a major issue in any administration. And sport is no different, especially now where sport has become very commercialized and there's so much at stake. So very insightful, dealing with that issue of governance, the issue of ethics, ensuring that there is transparency, accountability, and diversity, which is very critical. So I now open the floor to members in the audience for any questions or comments. We have some time, so you have about 10 minutes where we can take some questions. So,
No.
so we're gonna start off by I'm gonna ask. Okay, Dr. Mansingh.
Right. Thank you very much. That was excellent. Two points for comment. Number one, in this governance structure, and you talk about Olympic movement and so on, one of the perceptions of some of the countries that are not as well organized or not as well as vocal is that their voice is lost in the governance structure, and that it's imposed upon them by a set of countries which have their systems, but is probably not as applicable to the smaller nations and so on. So how do you encompass everybody? That's number one. Number two, when we talk about rights and you know all the sort of yeah, all the even things that are it's all the sort of, you know, equity. One problem I have is that when you look at anti-doping and you look at the Court of Justice, CAS, that is a private court to which people have to pay to go to get justice. And that justice, whether they feel is fair or not, is not available to everybody. It's available to those who can afford it. What systems can we have in governance that allows everybody to have access to the same form of justice?
Well, actually, you know, you're talking now about an issue that is related to how the world works. It's not just about sport, right? I wish I could have an answer to that, honestly, how we can get everybody to be equal and equally represented. I don't. But I think that the sport world gives a lot of opportunities to all the involved stakeholders to speak up. There are the opportunities there. I really think, and I've witnessed, having been involved in the organization of free Olympic Games, but that's my personal aspect. I've seen how networking and lobbying in the framework, sorry, I'm not good with that, in the framework of the Olympic movement works. And this is a bit reciprocal. It's not just about the I don't like the expression of saying, the big and the small. I don't think that is right. But, I see how networks are formed and have been formed and were formed many, many years ago. And these networks are very difficult to change, and it requires, but as I said, this is my personal opinion, because I've seen how it worked. And they're very, and you can see that they're there. And I think a very good example is what had happened with FIFA leadership, and how even though the president of FIFA was accused of various wrongdoings, still he was elected, at the same time. So a reform should be made first inside every organization itself, and then further expand to the Olympic movement as a whole. I don't know if I make myself clear. Okay. And again, that's my opinion. Okay.
Paolo was so kind to hand me the microphone. Thank you for this overview over the state of, or you could say the structures in sport governance. I noted two things on your last slide. One is that you skipped I don't know if it was on purpose, but you jumped from paragraph 1 to paragraph 3.
I'm sorry.
So the whole thing about culture, the whole thing about
sorry.
the shift of culture, which I think is
Okay, can we put it back the slide? Sorry, I was a bit stressed with the time, honestly.
yeah,
so
but
I was just doing like
and
this.
you no reason to be stressed.
Sorry.
No, but then we can just read it. But that's fine. But because you write something about the need for a shift of culture, and that's a long discussion. I would argue that a shift of culture can be very much furthered by having good rules and regulations. They are no guarantee in themselves, because if you have a bad culture, you can just amend the rules and bend them and forget them. But my question was, you mentioned independent oversight as a requirement. And I assume it's because you think we don't have it today. The Olympic movement would argue, oh, we have a lot of independent oversight. Now we have the ASWAF and Association of Summer Olympic International Federations and their counterparts in the winter federations. They would say, oh, we have this perfect benchmarking system and everybody undergo assisted self-evaluation, so no problem. Do you think it is needed to strengthen independent oversight, and how could you envisage it would be done?
Well, okay. I think this is not the last slide, though. Oh, yeah, that's me. Sorry, I'll do it. No worries. This one, right? Yeah. Sorry, I will just, of course. So, that's a political question, really, again. But, and again, my personal opinion is that, you know how WADA started? Remember? It was supposed to be an initiative by the European Commission in cooperation with the IOC. And then the European Commission decided they didn't want to do that anymore because they had concerns about, what was happening with the IOC. So they said, okay, we don't want to be involved. So for some, I think that whenever, there is an initiative by the Olympic movement itself, somehow it becomes strongly influenced by the Olympic movement itself. So that's why you know, and I think we also had the discussion about tennis, what happened. I don't know, I had this discussion with some colleagues there. So I think that this kind of initiative should be taken by factors outside the Olympic movement. And that's what I think.
Thanks also from my side, no, very inspiring and useful, no, the topics that we have been working upon, and this helps, very helpful. Two, let's call them questions, request of considerations. The first one is that you have somehow, it's obvious it is a simplification, no, traditional governance and let's say modern governance discourse, but yeah, of course. But within this simplification, maybe you can add some considerations about something that maybe in the past model, in the traditional model, for some reasons, was somehow already a bit different, or that had included some element of some interest for this, for a participatory process, for instance, and something in the, let's say, emerging models, governance models or possible governance models that have some criticalities as a personal way of looking at things. I always suspect that things are never good or bad, but typically are both. No, include both. So even in these emerging governance models, participatory stakeholders, representation of interest, I always sometimes fear that the efficiency, the cost effectiveness, sometimes also not fully legitimate interests are represented, or not so necessarily to the good governance. So just to, if you have some comment to do on that. And the second one is that personally, I believe, I've never been studying specifically this topic, but that one very peculiar element of the world of sport is that we need monopoly, because we cannot have different world champions, different European champions. So monopoly is something which, it is not a free market. So you don't have competitors. You cannot move from one organization to another. This is for athletes, for coaches, for officers, for anybody. So this creates a very peculiar environment, and I believe that from the point of view of governance, this is an important and even fascinating challenge, and maybe you can have some comments on this.
Sure. Well, first of all, we have to remember, everything that we talk about, sport reflects society, okay? And what's required from sport and sport governance is also always a reflection of modern society. For example, I have heard many times that Pierre de Coubertin, he was, he didn't like women, or he didn't include them in sport governance. And I'm like, he lived in 1890, until 1920, 1928. So, the way he was thinking, it was a reflection. You can't hear me? No? Okay, so I have to go back. That's why. Okay. So, do you hear me in what I said now? So I think in this aspect, of course, I cannot say everything I think in a presentation, and I'm always concerned, because if I start, then I never finish. So that's why I'm trying to be to the point. But the thing is that whatever happens in sport governance is basically a reflection of society, and the way, and to me, the Olympic movement and what de Coubertin did back then was amazing. I mean, in a world that there were no airplanes, right? I mean, he actually managed to create NOCs all around the world. In 1896, he used the established networks for religious, whatever it was, and he managed to do that. So this network, this team, this movement that was created then has survived and expands and gets better or gets different, or along the process of the rest of the world and the process of the society. So yes, even, you see, I'm starting talking a lot. So the thing is that monopoly. Monopoly, it's a big word, and I don't know how you define it. But when you say sport has monopoly, you're including all these interests there, because it's not just the federations, right? It's also the sponsors. It's also media. So you're talking about sport monopoly that comprises all sport governing factors in the end. And this has been recognized even by the European Union when they're doing the European sport-related policy making and implementation, even though in the beginning they had tried, to get more into this, and they have tried, to say, oh, okay, sport is business and we take charge of sport. In the end, they said, okay, you keep your autonomy in many aspects, okay, but we have to take control of the EU, of the commercial aspect of sport in the framework of the European Union. So, yes, monopoly, but let's define monopoly, okay? Monopoly is all that, basically, right? And yes, autonomy, because sport, in order to survive from the Olympic movement from 1892, I believe it was a Congress, I know it was a Congress, until today, has safeguarded its autonomy. But, respecting the new demands of the world, like, we need transparency, we need accountability, we need ethics, we need diversity, inclusivity. This will safeguard the Olympic movement even more, Thank you.
Okay, last comment or question, George.
Efcaristo, brilliant, cracking presentation, learn a lot. But always that I see discussions about sports governance, what comes to my mind is Max Weber's theory on institutions. And he always, and I believe, of course, our sociology colleague may know this much better than me, but he always thought, well, and as you said, yeah, institutions start with a mission, but then the mission becomes their survival. Yeah, they will do everything to survive. So that's why, and I keep thinking that reform from within, it's not possible. Yeah, we need to keep, and I think this is happening across the world when we see communities protesting against major sporting events, refusing to host major sporting events, and the change, yeah, in the past decade or so, yeah, most sport events going to the BRICS countries, and now another change of the FIFA and IOC from consumerism to prosumerism. So I wanted to hear from you, if possible, how we can strengthen not only the people or the associations and institutions related to the markets, but also the citizens of the states, us, yeah, particularly to try to enforce our power to struggle or to fight against all these issues that happen within these major governing sporting bodies. Thank you.
Ilya, before you respond, I just want to ask Francisco, so she can respond to both.
It's okay. I'll just respond to this one first, okay? So Jorge, I believe you're talking in general about civil society. That's what you're talking about, civil society, modern civil society. Well, in the field of sport, it's also about civil society and how civil society, civil society doesn't have the same value all over the world, right? So there are countries where civil society is more educated, and can, like Australia, for example, when they have power and they can demand and, get as well. And there are other countries where civil society doesn't even exist. So I believe in that framework, though. Sport has again, this particularity, this great characteristic that through Olympic education, they can do things, right? They can empower people. But then again, as I said, there is no straight answer to this. Where civil society exists, they require change, they require reform, and things go on. They protest, but it's not all over the world the case.
Hi, thank you. The presentation was really enlightening for me. And I just wanted to ask a question because I'm feeling like I want to steal something that I want to use with our students. You talked about modern governance and these governing factors like companies, media, funders. When you were talking, I was thinking of our reality in New Zealand and how implicitly we talk about these stakeholders, but we don't incorporate them into our governance view. We talk about them as relevant stakeholders. And this is the question, this is like, would you recommend me to start pushing this idea that explicitly these relevant stakeholders are an intrinsic part of our governance structure?
We can always talk if you're talking about, again, it's about definition, okay? And in our sciences, definition is everything, and it's what works for the scientists. So I always start with that. That's why I said this was my definition. It might work for you, it might not work for you. If we now go to the stakeholders definition, which is a different thing from the political actors definition, as you know. So we have internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. But then it all depends, are you seeing it from a management point of view? That's how you talk about it. So you know how important is it really external stakeholders when you depend on sponsors and media?
That's exactly why I had that doubt. Now, I asked you the question because we are very dependent. I'm thinking especially of our funding bodies. They are intrinsic to our functioning in, let's call it the regional sport organizations, et cetera. But they're not part of our governance as a regional sport organization, but we intrinsically depend on them. So should I, with our future sports administrators and managers, et cetera, that I'm teaching, should I be pushing this message that, hey, we're looking at another part of governance here that we've talked about as external stakeholders that are relevant, but they're actually more relevant than we think. They're actually part of our governance structure. That's what it made me, your presentation made me think of that.
Okay, I'll tell you something else also. I'll give you another definition of governance now, not given by me, but by Anne Henry. We can also talk about systemic governance. You see, this definition of governance is related to political actors, right? So it's what comprises the whole landscape. But when you talk what happens internally in a organization, you can actually take the definitions by Henry, which is like systemic governance, political governance, and I believe what you're referring to is basically systemic governance, right? And what happens, you see, I'm not good at that. What happens, as a system, okay? So I would rely more on that definition than this one, and we can talk about it whenever you want, even later, okay? This just shows the variety of stakeholders and political actors in the world and how the system changes. But when you're referring to a specific sport organization, it's basically if you take this definition and adapt it accordingly. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ilya, for an insightful presentation and responding to the audience. So Ilya got a longer time for Q&A because she finished her presentation. I want to make sure everyone gets their allotted time, okay? So that's why Ilya's Q&A went a little longer than maybe the others to come. So thank you very much, Ilya.
Thank you, Professor Ilya, for that wonderful, insightful presentation. May I request Dr. Shyam Sundar Rath Associate Professor of National Sports University, to kindly present a token of appreciation for the wonderful presentation. Thank you. Now we can continue with the session. Yeah.
Our second presenter today would be Francisco Serrano Romero, and he would be speaking on empowering youth through sport, embedding formal mentoring programs.
Good morning. How are you all? Good to see you back for day 3. All right. Okay. Oh, let me go back. There we go. Cool. When this conference came out, Fit for Life and Empowering Youth through traditional games, I immediately thought of putting forward some work that we had done with one of the 2 hats that I wear. So I put forward this research review presentation that we had done for the Ministry of Education, put into the format of what I could present here for you today, and explain a little bit of what we do in New Zealand with our Pacifica communities. So I'm going to be talking to you today about empowering youth through sport, embedding formal mentoring programs through their sporting endeavors. Now, I start with this all the time because I confuse the heck out of people with my accent, with my look, with my family. So very quickly, there you go. I was born in Chile, grew up in California, going to primary there. Oops, went back. Let's go. Oh. Let's go. Yeah, it disappeared. Yeah, there we go. Went to high school and law school in Chile. That's where I met my beautiful wife. But I was living in New York, going back and forth for quite a while. Then decided that we were living in Chile, had the 3 kids, and then we thought nothing better than to move to New Zealand, where I've spent the last 18 years of my life, and where actually I've lived in that actual home the longest I've ever lived in any other home. So New Zealand is our home, but I come with a lot of traveling baggage and a weird accent. So that's just so you know, and that's how I got to Goa this past week on Monday. Like I was saying, I wear 2 hats. I'm the director of Thomas Education, where we deliver program design. We do education delivery of sports program and business programs all around that sports context. Because sports gets the best out of people, that's driven a line of leadership programs and educational sports camps in New Zealand, because we have a sport that everybody wants to play and know how we play it, which is rugby. So that's delivered a very keen area in Thomas Education. But my other hat, and that's where this presentation is embedded in, is I'm the managing trustee of the Malachi Latini Trust, which is a Pacifica trust. Pacifica means a trust that's focused on people from the Pacific. And with Malachi Latini Trust, this trust starts with sport. It starts with rugby, and I'll explain that very briefly in the coming slide. But we deliver these 4 areas: coach development programs for Pacifica coaches, Pacifica support for youth and their families, as well as mentoring programs specifically for youth. The trust, and this is the background that I want to give you. The trust, we've been privileged this week to have distinguished Indian athletes here. On this page, you have 3 very distinguished athletes, and they are the basis of our trust. Malachi Alatini, the man in the middle, is the father of these 2 gentlemen. The one on the right of him is Pete Alatini, former All Black. And on the left is his brother, Tony Alatini. Now, the story today is that Tony was much better at rugby than his brother that was an All Black. But the one that had the most success in sport was the one that had a scholarship to a top tier high school that opened up all the opportunities for him. Tony, after his playing career internationally, he went and studied a degree in sport, but he studied it when he was 40 something years old. He was so old that I was actually his lecturer. And that's how we met. That's how we crossed paths. The story is important for you to understand because that's where their life experiences comes from, to actually put together a trust that's embedded in rugby, because that's where they started and that's where their whole belief is in. But it's also to acknowledge the strength and the value of immigrant communities, in this case, Pacifica. Their father, which was a successful Tongan rugby player that beat the Wallabies back in 1973, he migrated and left everything and all his success and distinguished kudos in Tonga to New Zealand for a better life for his kids, which is a typical immigrant story. One of the reasons why they've took me on, despite I'm not Pacifica. I have an immigrant story as well. And he went to New Zealand looking for success for his kids, but pushed it in a Pacifica way. Mr. Alatini still doesn't speak English well. And young Pacifica in New Zealand have to navigate that space while living in a New Zealand world, achieving highly in sport, but at the same time, what else is there? And many times, because of that family context, all we're pushing for is that high achievement in sport. So that's the background. You could have read that, but that's a little bit of background of the story for you to understand. So our mission as a trust, and this was a long talanoa that we had during COVID. Luckily, we were closed and locked down for a long while, so we had a lot of video calls to have this talanoa over 2020. It was to empower Tongans and Pacific Islanders in New Zealand to achieve at higher potential in sport, because that's the happy place, but also in other vocational fields or educational fields, which is what we're lacking in that community. And that's our mission. So we want to actually develop and implement sporting and educational opportunities. We want to actually look after the physical and mental and emotional health. Some of our Pacifica students and athletes in high school go through tremendous pressure, both physical and mentally. And that's a huge area of our concern that we need to promote, not for it to happen more, but actually how do we safeguard that space, provide mentorships, how we can actually penetrate that space and actually help out, continue to find enjoyment in sport for our Pacific communities, because when it becomes a search for that professional contract, it stops being fun. And many times you get comments like from a French rugby team where one of our Pacifica talents and All Blacks went over, that the owner of the team said they changed them on the plane. And that's because the enjoyment had left. And finally, want to empower and support our youth to continue to participate in different areas of sport, education, live their culture like we saw last night. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to see the students really enjoying your culture and presenting it. That is a battle when you live in a cross-cultural society. How do you keep to your culture? So it's a way of incentivizing it as well. So back in 2020, we sat down and we started our conversations with the Ministry of Education, and we came together and we made the mentoring program that we called the Whakataukai mentoring program. Basically, it means I'm a brother next to you. That's what Whakataukai in a very broken translation means. This is the mentoring program that we put together, which was a very natural approach. It's something that Peter and Tony and the team of coaches that has the Tongan Barbarian rugby team, which is one of the teams that the trust had been doing for a few years, but now putting it into a structured system of how do we support young Pacifica players. So what I'm presenting to you now and are basically the findings and conclusions that I'll get at the end are our review and reflections, and mostly our reviews and reports to the ministry that we've done in the last 3 years. So it all started from, like I was saying, our experience. What do we understand from our experience? Tony was a player. He was also a coach and a manager for the Tongan rugby team in the past 2 World Cups. Peter was an All Black, and at the prime of his career, he was change of coach and he was cut, and he was no longer an All Black. We have our experience working together. We have the experience of young Frank, which is one of the young men that we've mentored, and he debuted for New Zealand Sevens in Perth this summer. And we have other young talents that we're very excited about because they've been athletic talents, but they've progressed to actually academic careers, which is what we're trying to pursue as a trust. So things that we are trying to approach are, if it would have been good if I would have been shown or told experiences that Tony and Peter had as they were going through their sporting career. If I would have known when I was 20 years old that I could actually study at the same time of playing. Us being involved with coaches, we've also seen the low achievement of students, athletes, outside of sport. They're hugely successful. Young Frank. But struggling to get through their papers at school. So why can't an athlete not also be a success in another field? They know how to perform, but who has actually showed them how to perform outside of that playing field? We also know, and that's the immediate two brothers case, that not all athletes progress to the top of the pyramid and become that elite athlete with that high, heavy contract. And in some sports, that professional contract does not mean that you're going to make a sustained living for the rest of your life. So how do we support other careers? We understand that there's more opportunities outside of sport for our youth than chasing that professional contract many times because of that pyramid that we know that we face. And that there are big opportunities that come from sport, from the learnings, from the discipline, from knowing how to perform. So how can we actually take that know-how and use it with our youth in another field? So this was all the understanding that we had of the environment based out of experience. So how do we channel it through a mentoring program? So our purpose was deliberate. We had an aim: holistic youth development through sport. And what does that mean? That we're looking at both sport and academic and vocational pathways. The kids that go through our program need to be achieving in one of those two areas. We have 2 feet. We have to take steps with both feet. How can we achieve that? And our focus was very deliberate as well. Year 12 and 13 students, that we want to celebrate their sporting success, but also what's happening in their other contexts. And their other contexts are not only sport, but it is their family and social life. It's also their academic or career decisions in vocational fields. I mention this because many times, specifically our Pacific athletes, they fall and they lose all their momentum, not because of their sporting talent. They lose it because of off-field issues. So how do we prepare them to be better young men or young ladies? How do we prepare them to actually take a look at their bank account and understand what the heck's going on? So this is our purpose, and it's very deliberate in the work that we're wanting to do as we're holding and carrying our students forward. I have 2 photos there of 2 young men that have gone through our program. The top one, he actually very quickly went up the professional pathway, played for Tonga in the World Cup. There you see him scoring a try. There's a beautiful photo of him. Those kind of moments in sport never go away. As a trust, we're like, yes, we got one of the boys playing for Tonga in the World Cup. Great photo, we can use them in a presentation, right? But then we also have young Tonga Helu. And 2 years ago, he's a beast. You can see how a beast of a player he is there. He made New Zealand schoolboys, which is the highest at under 18 level, the highest team you can make in New Zealand. And he did not decide on a rugby future, meaning what rugby academy that he would go to in the country, when you had the major rugby academies trying to get him to sign, because he decided that his first priority decision was where he was going to study engineering. And you see that photo and you see an athlete. You don't see a third-year engineering student. And that's what we're really proud about. So this is the Whakatau Kai program. And what we do is we go to the schools. We have rugby schools in New Zealand. These are basically factories of professional rugby players at the high school age. And they are factories because they also go to the islands and they bring over a very talented, big in size Pacifica young man to play for their team. But their priority focus at school is to win that championship. And they're spending 30 hours of time at school during the week, and what are they learning? So our purpose is to go to those schools and work with those Pacifica athletes through what I have there, a multi-channel approach. So yes, schools are very happy that we have a Google Classroom, because there's where we provide a lot of the information for our mentoring program for our students. And it's on their same platform that they're already using for their subjects. But we also have workshops. Every fortnight, we go in, we have a lunchtime, afternoon, a class hour, depending on the school, how we adapt to it. A workshop where the players are there, the students are there, the kids are there, and we are able to talk to them through different topics. Challenges, success, career decisions. We have an array of topics that we talk to them over the year. And these get molded depending on the reality of the school, of the group of players, and also what's happening in their context. But the biggest things that we actually do, where I think we get the biggest success, is around the individual mentoring sessions that we have and the group messaging. And here's where we're flexible. Sometimes those individual mentoring sessions are on the side of a rugby field, or they're walking from the field to the changing rooms, or from the changing rooms walking to the field while they're warming up. It's at their boarding house if they're boarders. That's where we have those individual mentoring sessions where it's not come sit down in an office, it's about creating a safe space in their environment, which is usually that sporting environment, where you start talking about the sport and then you venture off on how, for example, the family might be putting pressure that the student has to get a part-time job. And the other big, incredible tool that we've been using is the messaging groups. We've been using this week the WhatsApp group to communicate about the buses arriving, not arriving, what time we're leaving, etc. It works. So we said, why not use it with our cohorts of mentees? So we have these WhatsApp groups where we're able to feed them weekly goal setting forms that provides us feedback to actually touch upon different aspects that they're working on, not working on, etc. The group messaging is a huge tool. Those kids that want to engage back, we have content. Those that don't want to engage back, we also have data saying that they're not engaging back. So it's actually a really good tool to have a very general message, but also then to connect individually with our kids. So the research questions that we posed to the reports that we've written, to the reviews that we've done over the last 3 years were the following. What are the specific benefits of sport-based mentoring programs for youth beyond athletic improvement? Secondly, how do these programs contribute to the holistic development of participating youth? And finally, what are the key elements of effective and impactful sport-based mentoring programs? So that's what we questioned ourselves, because we were delivering, we were reviewing, we were reporting, and it gave us a chance, because of these 2 feet that we have on the academic side, both on the field-based work. Okay, if we provide a bit of evidence here, we might have a little bit more strength to move forward as the years come. And our approach was the following. Let's go here. It was a Trojan horse approach, what we used with the kids. And we started with sports or games that we play. And this, I'll go back to George's presentation yesterday. At the end, we're involved in sports because we like to play games. And that's because they're fun. All the kids that are playing, they're playing it because they want to get further, but they started playing it because they enjoyed it. They're playing, they don't necessarily swim. But the ones that do swim, because of their body size and strength, they're fantastic water polo players. But why aren't they playing rugby? Because water polo has become funner for them. So we can't forget that, and that's been key for us. But we know that with our Pacifica kids, we have things that they resist. And one of the things is showing up, or showing up on time. So how do we build, you have Pacifica students, George? Yeah. So how do we break that? How do we make them show up? How do we make them study, work, and listen to their parents? These are the things that we know that they resist. The parents are putting a lot of pressure on them all the time. Work, many times because of the socioeconomic situation, is also a pressure, and it's being pushed to work. Is also a pressure, and it's being pushed to work. Study, well, many times they're treated as not being smart students, so that puts them off immediately with regards to study. And showing up, well, we're Pacifica, we're relaxed. Oh, if I don't want to, I won't show up. So how do we embed the work ethic that comes from playing rugby or water polo in their other fields? Because they do show up to training because they enjoy it. They have fun. They do know the plays, and rugby, for those that are not familiar, in today's world is a very complex game that you have to learn a lot of plays and positions on the field. They study that, they understand it. They work bloody hard. On the field, in the gym, they work bloody hard. And they listen to coaches. So why can't we get that and put it into their other fields of practice? So this has been our approach, and I'm going to go mainly to, for us, understanding exactly how we're going to deliver this. And it is, yes, we have mentors. And many times we go, well, we have a mentoring program. We are aligning a mentor with the mentees. Yeah, but how are you doing it? Well, this is how we're doing it. We're doing it online, and we're actually deliberate about saying this. We are using online tools, but we're also in person. But what are we doing online? Yes, I've already spoken about the group messaging, the individual messages. So many times we're not verbally speaking with our kids, but we're speaking to them the way that they're used to speaking nowadays on their messaging. We have the in-person sessions, what us old people are used to doing. Let's have a workshop, show up. We start at 12:15, we'll finish at 12:45, and we'll talk about these 5 points. Yes, we do those as well. It makes the schools really happy, right? It makes the schools really happy. We do get good outcomes and talanoa, conversation and discussion out of them. We do, but to tell you the truth, the group sessions are actually a real big tick box with regards to our organizations. And then we have the individual one-on-ones. And then the deliverables, where we deliver each one of these. You'll be interested to actually hear that our one-on-ones, our program was always meant to run between February and December. But we've been flooded over the past few years doing one-on-one sessions in January, when actually kids have approached us after a year's long engagement with regard to support on what are going to be their decisions of transitioning from school to that adult space, whether it's tertiary education or whether it's employment or whether it's professional rugby, etc. And it's been incredible how busy we've been in the month of January because we get that approach individually from the students. So the review process that we've had for our mentoring program comes with monthly check-ins with the mentors, just to know how they're handling it and to actually cross the support for them as well. And the 6-month review that we have, which we include feedback from students, schools, mentors, and we also have the talanoas, the discussions with the school liaisons and the mentors. And finally, the yearly report to the ministry. So we've gathered all this data, we've looked at it, and there's a few things that have been coming out pretty consistently. Which are these? There's positive impact of the mentoring. So it's like, yes, we're achieving, right? We're doing a good job. But what does it mean? The self-esteem is up. And that's because we are hearing from the students that they feel more confident of actually going into a class that they once thought it was more difficult because they've compared it to their sporting success. Academic performance has gone up, and also they've been a little bit more stable because they have another person outside their family that they can talk to. So as you can see here, and I'll move because I have 5 minutes, the different findings that we have, but I'll move concretely to the ones that have actually captured us in terms of motivating us moving forward and also validated us in regards to what we've already had started doing with coaches. So these are the conclusions, but these are the 3 main ones. Community involvement is absolutely critical for the success and sustainability of our programs. If we don't have the support of the schools, those school liaisons, the coaches of the teams, the teachers, the families, our mentoring program does not work well. Empowering the supporting community, those people I've just mentioned, is really important to maximize the impact that we make. And finally, that future program development that we do should really prioritize that community engagement and training. Now, this is where I want to actually stop and really emphasize. Yes, we've had an impact with our kids. Yes, we have time that we spent with them. But our time compared to the time that teachers and coaches, managers of teams spend with them is actually 1/8 or 1/6 of the time that they spend with them. So we've actually really noticed that we need to empower those relevant supporting communities that spend valuable, positive time with the kids, with the tools to enable them to achieve both on the playing field, but also in those other potential career prospects like vocational fields or educational fields. So this is what we're doing as a trust. I'll start with what we've been doing over a long period of time. The cultural competency. A lot of our players are not coached by Pacifica coaches, especially at the higher tier schools, more competitive schools. They have what we call white coaches. So knowing how to relate to our Pacifica players is extremely important. I'm the first one that had made a mistake relating with Pacifica coaches about 14 years ago. I came out with my American personality, gave a great locker room speech, and the boys all went, "Fran, can we bless the jerseys?" They put all the jerseys down, they knelt and started praying. And my hype that was up here just went straight down. We went on the field. We got 2 tries against us. Before we knew it, 5 minutes in, we were like 14-0 down. Because I got it wrong. My cultural competency was not there. I can say it's much better now, but it's a very important part of understanding our community. We have a coaching environments workshop, which is where it's a very practical workshop where we work with coaches on how to create a coaching environment. We have Talanoa with Pacifica coaches, which this one is fantastic. Because you know what we do there? We eat. It's all around food. The only thing that we actually organize for the Talanoas is that we have a feed. Why? Because we invite coaches to have a feed. We know we're going to be discussing coaching, their issues, etc. And it will just be a flowing conversation where coaches will get support by just being there, having a space to share their challenges, their successes, so that what we're doing together. We have also modern leadership, which is how to create a learning organization system within a team. This is very much the way we coach teams in New Zealand, but it's implicit. So we've put it into a workshop that's actually explicit of how to generate that learning organization within the teams. And that facilitates for us how they can build that relationship where they can be more than coaches. They can actually be providing those other messages that we're so keen on. And then what we've just recently added this past year is that now we have two qualifications. We have the New Zealand Certificate in Team Leadership, which is a business qualification. It's like an introductory business qualification. And we have the New Zealand Certificate in Coaching. So that way we can actually also be providing a stepping stone of where they want to go, starting from their own sporting interest. So this is what we're doing at the moment as a consequence of the findings and what we had experienced that actually worked with our Pacifica kids, going back and reviewing it, reviewing the reports and going, you know what, there needs to be a lot more support in this area. We can do an eighth, but if we can get the supporting communities to do a lot more of the work for us, we can actually empower our Pacifica youth through these formal mentoring systems much, much better. So as a summary, what we need to do for our mentoring programs is have a clear purpose. For us is we want them to be successful in sport, but find some kind of career. Approach through sport in multiple channels. I showed you the different multiple channels that we use. And we need to build robust support for our supporting communities. So that's our way of empowering our youth through mentoring systems. So now let's just cross our fingers that the Ministry of Health buys into our project the same way the Ministry of Education has in the past 4 years. Thank you very much. Oh, just before I forget, my contact details and the publicity stunt. And at the end of the year, the Society is actually hosting the international conference in Auckland. So you have this QR code there that you can scan. Quite a bit of information is already on the webpage. So please feel excited to go see a little bit what we're about in New Zealand. You're sure going to have a really good time. We have good weather in December. So about 22 to 24 degrees maximum during the day. So you'll really enjoy it when you're out there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for what I consider a very rich sociological and anthropological explanation of your organization. And I see the importance of wider structures. If you promise that I can do the haka when I come in December, I'll be happy. We have 9 minutes so for Q&A. So I'm going to open the floor to questions or comments to Mark. Francisco, sorry. So the floor is open.
Mahitika Anna, yeah, great work. Thank you. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, I've had like 12 questions for you, but you've been responding them throughout your presentation. So I have maybe two. Yeah, the first one, and as the colleague mentioned, the haka, I'd like to understand a bit more while have you considered gender questions and particularly masculinities questions throughout the training. Yeah, I saw that you work a lot with Pacifica boys. And second, I wanted if you could just give a few examples on how your data collection methodologies work, please. So thank you so much.
Perfect. The first question, we work, basically our cohorts are boys or girls because in the majority of the very sporty schools that we work with, they are either boys schools or girls schools. So that ends up that our cohorts that we work with end up being usually boys cohorts or girls cohorts. And at the end of the year, the separate cohort that we have, which is our Helala girls team and our TBR boys team. Again, they're boys and girls teams, so we do work in separate cohorts, which has actually proven to be very favorable in regards to the topic of safeguarding, especially that women's space. It's been very enlightening to have a specific women's focus on our women's cohort. So that's what we've done. Quickly on the haka. The haka it's a war dance, but it's used in multiple ways. It's used as a sign of welcome. It's used as a sign of celebratory sign and a sign of respect, but also it is a war dance. So just like that, the story that we hear from the Middle Ages, that when you would cross roads, you would hold hands, and that's where the handshake came from. The haka is basically that. You get a haka and how you respond to it is to see at what level of friendship or non-friendship you are at. So that's a little bit the background of the haka. Now with Pacifica, they have different type of war dances. It's not necessarily called a haka, and that's why it's so important for us to also embed that cultural understanding of Samoans, Fijians, Tongans, of their cultural background in a New Zealand environment. Because then you see the All Blacks, you have a variety of ethnicities all behind a New Zealand Maori cultural stance, but we have to acknowledge that we have a variety of demographics and ethnic groups behind that. Now, regards to the data collection, what we've had over the years, George, is because this was a Ministry of Education funded project, we needed to provide evidence to the Ministry of Education. So when we put this through a research so we can actually build a body of evidence, so for our future engagements with other ministries, because change of government funding entities have changed, what we've done is we've gone back to the surveys that we had from the students and mentors. We've gone back to the reports and we've gathered the evidence there. So that's been our data collection. It's been a review of the feedbacks and the reports that have been written over the past 3 years.
I have a question. How have they integrated into wider society, and how has the wider Kiwi society received the Pacifica?
That's a great question. Do you want me to give you the political question, the answer to it, or the reality?
Snippets of both. Snippets of both.
Politically, we are a very well integrated society, very welcoming of all cultures. And that's a truth. I mean, look at me. I'm Chilean born, American accent, living in New Zealand with a family, and they call us Kiwis. So yes, it's a very well integrated society in that sense. But like in all parts of the world, many times it's not necessarily a cultural segregation or difference, it's also a socioeconomic segregation. And in the case of Pacifica, primarily, Pacifica have been the factory workers in New Zealand. And they are at the lower end of the socioeconomic tail. And many times that's the reason why there's a segregation. It's not because, well, you go, oh, they're Pacifica. But is it because they're Pacifica, or is it because they're on the lower end of the socioeconomic tail? So that's a challenge in terms of the understanding. I can say I've been very fortunate to have worked for the past 15 years in South Auckland. Very rich Pacifica Maori community where they've taken me as one of their own. So I'm very fortunate to have that cross-cultural understanding and relationship, which I think is the most important thing. But there is a bit of a, and that's why it's so important for us, like that young man Tonga that is going to engineering school. He's breaking that barrier, and there's that possibility. PETA has broken that barrier. So we know that there's a possibility, and then the community is very accepting. So we need to push the kids to actually break that barrier so they don't fall back into that minimum wage job that their parents have been doing for the last 25 years.
Thank you. I suppose it's a work in progress. All right. So Thank you very much, Francisco. Oh, sorry. There's a question. My apologies.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to this great program. I have only a short question because I didn't understand who are the mentors. Do they come from the sports side or from the school side, or are they independent persons between? And when they are independent, how you find them?
I'll start. This might sound very strange, but our mentors are good people. That's the first priority. They have to be good people. They need to align with what we call our kaupapa. Our kaupapa is like our philosophy. Some are actually just community coaches. But again, you might have a 45-year-old community coach, which is a good man with a life's worth of experience, but absolutely no qualification. Does that not make him a qualified man to actually push the right message? It does make him, if he understands the kapapa and he understands where he might have missed out, he's the right person. So our choice is good people, and we don't have that many. We reach over 180 kids a year. But the way that we reach it, we've actually structured the program. We work with a total, if I'm not mistaken, 6 to 7 mentors to branch out to the total group. So we've been very fortunate that we've worked with good people. There's a lovely young lady. She is Arab of a background. She's a lawyer, not sporty, and she's been ideal for us to actually identify best how to approach our work with young ladies. So again, it's finding those ideal people that understand the kaupapa, they understand that what we're trying to achieve, but to not displace the value that sport has for our group, because that's where they have success. Or like Tony says, you're used to getting a clap, a pat on the back every week for how well you did on the field. But once you're not playing anymore, it doesn't matter how much you earn. Nobody's giving you a clap or a pat on the back for how well you played. All you get is a paycheck, and it doesn't feel the same. So we need people to understand that, because that's what the kids are thriving on. They're thriving on that they're awesome, that they're strong, that they carry the ball well. But how do we support them in those other things?
All right. Thank you very much, Francisco, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for that engaging presentation. Now, I would invite Professor Usha S. Nair, Madam, to come and give a token of appreciation to Professor Francisco. Yeah, that's a traditional Lengyan and a Sangai as a memento.
Hello. Good morning to one and all. Myself, Dr. Ajinkya Kurtarkar, and I am as a co-chairperson here. I would like to introduce the next speaker. And our next speaker is Kishore, and his topic of presentation is Bridging Tradition and Modernity, the role of indigenous game in youth development. Kishore, over to you, sir.
Good morning, all. I think it's very pleasant morning and a very important topic we are discussing on the empowering of the youth, bridging both the tradition and the modernity. So I am taken a slightly different topic which will have more emphasis to the tradition. And I think most of the speakers here have touched down on modernity. So being from India and we have a rich and glorious tradition and culture, I would like to rather dwell into the traditional part, the cultural part, and how it can be linked with the modernity so that the youth could be empowered. So this perspective would like to, ponder upon this field of empowerment of youth, taking strength, deriving strength from the tradition and the culture of, especially the Indian system, where we had a very rich and glorious tradition and culture, which was one time one of the best in the world, and even now. So let us look into how we can take strength, derive strength about our. So this is, the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji, that sports should become a part of our lives. If we are an young nation, our youth should get manifested in the field of sports as well. Sports means physical fitness, mental alertness, and personality enhancement. What else one needs? Sports is, in a way, is the recipe that brings people together. You might be aware that India has taken commendable steps in the promotion of sports in the recent past. Our budget has been almost doubled. We are the highest ever budget has been got, and even for looking into the traditional sports, and that is we have a vertical known as Khelo India. We have got around 1,000 crores this budget year. 1,000 crores, $135 million has been earmarked for the field. It's all the vision of the Prime Minister. You can see that his the statement itself so that it should become a part of our lives. And you see that, and he has also connected it with the youth, the young nation. We are the youth of the country, the youth of India are the youth of the world. As I always say that we have the largest youth population in the world. With our largest population and the largest youth population, now we have overtaken China, if I am not mistaken. So we are the largest youth population, means our around 25, below 25 youth comprises almost 50% of our population. And below 35 youth of the country has got almost 65% of the population of the country. That is why we are the youngest country, the youth of the country, where the rest of the world, the trends are getting, the age population is increasing. And we are comparatively at a safer side with the largest youth population. And empowering the youth is of predominant importance for us at this point of view, at that point of time. Because we would like to, and while doing so, we would like not only to take the steps of the what the modern trends prevailing in the worldwide, but also we would like to see that there are culturally the tradition and culture of India, the tradition of the science and the facts out of it are not being left out and also being adequately being educated to the students. Next. So these are, while doing so, I would like to bring it to your notice some of the ancient thoughts of the leaders in the field of education. If you look into this education, both of the Indian, the philosophers, educational philosophers, as well as for the Western, we have the quotes from Plato and Aristotle too. These are all the same. We can see that all this definition emphasizes, looks into the self. And the self itself, one self is the combination of everything. That that it is the combination of both the physical, mental, social, emotional, cultural, and so on. So all the philosophies, both the ancient and the modern, looks into the self, and that is why this physical education part, the sports part of it, has been inextricably interlinked with the education from the very time immemorial. And the thoughts of these philosophers make it the testimony, and it shows that it's a part of the self. It's a part of the education from the time immemorial. If you take the Aristotle, he has become more blunt in saying that, or rather more in saying the education is the creation of sound mind in a sound body. So this shows that, the thoughts of the ancient and modern times. And I will have a few more about the modern philosophers like John Dewey has what he has told, that it is a process of inviting truth and the possibility of encouraging and giving time and to discover. It's a process of living. Here also the process is of living and touches down on the self. How do we live? The process of and encouraging time for discovery. So here also you could see that the self and is beyond given, and it can be closely linked with the philosophy, the old traditional wisdom which has been revealed by our old philosophers. Next. So if you look into the ancient Indian culture, we can say that we had been the epicenter of knowledge. We had the ancient of the universities of the world, the Nalanda and Takshashila, said to have almost all the literature, all the what we had at the ancient times about the modern sciences, physics, chemistry, medical science, everything these universities had. So he had been epicenter of knowledge and from the time immemorial. And we had given equal sort of priority to both brain and brawn. And always physical activity was an integral part. If you see the tricks, the history, the first sort of educational system which was prevailing in our country was that about the Gurukul system, where the gurus used to teach the Shishyas in their own home. So there also, if you say that they used to teach not only the epics and Vedas and other things, but also they used to have various types of physical activities, including archery, horse riding, and other martial arts. So it has been a part of the educational system from the very old times. And it has been, the indigenous games are more than just pastimes. They have shape of physical, mental, and social development. If you do research into these past old traditional indigenous games, though it looks that it has been just, it's only a pastime measure, it's only a recreational, but the ingredients, the motor, the various, the drills, the components, the physical activities are very, very scientific. And it contains the movements part, the training part are all very modern, and it has got a lot of ingredients which can have positive transfer of training, which can help even in modern sports. So this, this some of the icons for education of the modern times, both our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi, also has his words is that education results in all-round development, drawing out the best in child's mind, body, and spirit. And also Swami Vivekananda, in his, who was very world famous Indian philosopher, sage, who got the very grand appreciation applause for his speech in Chicago. It is his word that you will be nearer to heaven through football than through study of Gita. Gita is our very one of the religious texts. So that means, that shows how the tradition and sports of Indian culture has been preserved, and the philosophers. So after having said to what is our question here is that how can we preserve and integrate these games into contemporary sports of youth development? While we say all this, this may not be acceptable to the modern youth, but we need to imbibe these, we need to showcase this to the modern youth to make it more appealing and to take up this towards them also. So what is the strategy? That is what we would like to, how can we do it? That is what I would like to take up, or rather present before you in this. How can we do that? So this I have already quoted, about the historical context of indigenous games in our country, about the ancient roots and the Vedic and Indus Valley civilization, traditional games. That Kho-Kho is a very traditional game of India, which has been playing very swift. I think some of you have seen, we had the World Kho-Kho Games recently hosted in Delhi. And now we are gradually trying to spread it throughout the world. It's a very beautiful game. And you see swift movement, and the Kho-Kho game, once you play the child at the child level, all the motor qualities which are required for any sport can be acquired. So that is, and also the Kabaddi. And we had the oldest Dholavira, the first ever indoor hall of the world was in Gujarat, 3000 BC. And also we had the traces of martial arts in our epics, both Mahabharata and Ramayana. And indoor games like, Chaturanga. This chess was originated from Chaturanga, which was existed in the ancient India. The snake and ladder and other recreational in the ancient. Also, these many of these sports have close relation to the modern sports. And in fact, we were not successful in making it Olympic sports. That was only a strategic sort of lapse which we had couldn't put it to such an extent. Otherwise, most of the sports had all the sort of merits to get into the Olympic arena as Olympic sports as well. And we are trying to do that. We are trying to promote and to get in so that the whatever is the benefits, whatever is the these games can offer to the youth, to the India, can be made to the rest of the world too, accessible to rest of the world. So these are about some of the notable traditional games and martial arts of the country. You would have heard about this. Some of that is this is about Kalari Payat, with one of the world's ancient martial art, which is originated from Kerala. Then we have the Tangta from Manipur. We have Silambam from Tamil Nadu. We have Malkamp, and these are some of the games which had been had tremendous value of physical fitness and also developing the various other motor qualities. Would like to play a small video about this Kalari Payat, which I think for those who are our international expert would be happy to know, to see this, how this Kalari is performed.
कलरी पयट्टू कहते हैं ये विश्व के सबसे पुराने मार्शल आर्ट फॉर्म्स में से एक है, जिसने केरल में करीब 5000 साल पहले जन्म लिया। और जानते हैं, इस प्राचीन कला से एक बेहद दिलचस्प कहानी जुड़ी हुई है। प्राचीन लोक कथाओं के अनुसार जब विष्णु के छठे अवतार परशुराम ने अपनी कुल्हाड़ी को अरब सागर में फेंका तो उसमें से धरती का एक टुकड़ा उभरा, केरला। इस धरती की रक्षा के लिए उन्होंने 21 शिष्यों को कलरी पयट्टू की ट्रेनिंग दी। यही नहीं, इसे सिखाने के लिए 64 गुरुकुल भी स्थापित किए। कलरी का मतलब होता है रणभूमि, और कलरी पयट्टू असल में एक प्राचीन युद्ध कला है, डिजाइन्ड फॉर एंशिएंट बैटलफील्ड्स। इसमें कॉम्बैट और डिफेंस टेक्निक्स तो हैं ही, साथ ही हैं हथियार, योगा और हीलिंग टेक्निक्स का बेमिसाल मिश्रण। शायद इसीलिए इसे मदर ऑफ ऑल मार्शल आर्ट्स भी कहा जाता है।
നമ്മുടെ കളരി അഭ്യാസം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു ജേണിയാണ്. ജേണി ഓഫ് വാരിയർ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ അയാളുടെ ഫുൾ ഓഫ് അവെയർനെസ് മെയ് കണ്ണാക്കി മാറ്റുക. കളരി അഭ്യാസത്തിൽ കൂടെ നേടേണ്ടുന്ന ഗുണം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മെയ് കണ്ണാക്കി മാറ്റുക. ബോഡി ബിക്കംസ് ദി ഐസ്.
कहते हैं हमारे शरीर में 64 वाइटल पॉइंट्स हैं, जिन्हें मर्म पॉइंट्स कहते हैं। इन वाइटल पॉइंट्स में लाइफ फोर्स एनर्जी यानी जीवन शक्ति की ऊर्जा बसती है। कलरी में इन्हीं पॉइंट्स को ध्यान में रखते हुए अटैक और डिफेंड करना सिखाया जाता है।
കളരിയിൽ കൂടുതലും പ്രാധാന്യം കൊടുക്കുന്ന ഇവയിൽ നിന്നുള്ള 64 മർമ്മസ്ഥാനങ്ങളാണ്. അത് അഭ്യാസ മർമ്മങ്ങൾ, കുലാഭ്യാസ മർമ്മസ്ഥാനങ്ങളിലേക്കാണ് പ്രയോഗങ്ങൾ കളരിയിലേശിക്കുന്നത്. അത് ഒരു ഓപ്പണന്റിനെ
इस कला में महारत हासिल करने के लिए पार करने होते हैं 4 पड़ाव। मेय पयट्टू शरीर और दिमाग को शक्ति प्रदान करने वाली ट्रेनिंग, कोलतारी पयट्टू, लकड़ी के हथियारों से ट्रेनिंग, अनंतारी पयट्टू, धारदार हथियारों से ट्रेनिंग और बेरुमकाई यानी हाथों से लड़ने की कला। और हर पड़ाव को पार करने में स्टूडेंट्स को 1 साल से भी ज्यादा वक्त लगता है। और अब आते हैं सबसे हैरान कर देने वाली बात पर। ये जो आप ब्रूस ली और कुंग फू के दीवाने हैं ना, कहते हैं इसका जन्म कलरी पयट्टू से ही हुआ है। कहा जाता है करीब 5th सेंचुरी बीसी में दक्षिण भारत के कलरी योद्धा प्रिंस बोधिधर्म चाइना गए थे और वहां इन्हीं की सिखाई एक्सरसाइजेस ने आगे चलकर कुंग फू की नींव रखी। कलरी सिर्फ योद्धा कला नहीं है, तन, मन और मस्तिष्क को तंदुरुस्त और संतुलित रखने वाली कला भी है। साथ ही ये केरल की दूसरी कलाओं की प्रेरणा भी है। और कहीं मिलेगी ऐसी अचंभित करने वाली कला? It happens only in India.
So, this is also about Silambam, another martial art from Tamil Nadu. The various types of martial art existed in various parts. So it was also around 5,000 years back, this martial art was existing, but later it was banned for some time. Then again, now also it is being trained. It also is a very, very important traditional martial art of India. Next, please. So these are some of the importance how this martial arts can be helpful and it can be, what are the reasons why it should be preserved. So it has got larger contribution towards social interactions and team network. It improves physical development, brain stimulation like any other sport. It helps to uphold the country's tradition, enlighten the children about that. Traditional games helps to make the most of the free time while improving the physical and mental well-being, enable social interaction, provide within a dynamic social life, promoting happiness. By engaging sports and physical activities, kids develop resilience as well as physical and mental strength. So these are all the various sort of contribution towards of traditional games and sports. And this shows, this chart shows that what are the various martial arts games which are in prevalence in India, the country, the various forms of it, and the various the various areas, the states which it is being practiced. Next. So what are now the major factor here is that how do you preserve it? And what are the challenges? That is the main challenge, is to preserve this traditional martial art and make it more appealing and make the more participation amongst the youth. So one of the main challenges is declining interest in the urban areas. The traditional games are less played in the cities among the wealthier communities and shift towards modern sports, digital entertainment, and lifestyle changes. It's a major threat and challenge to this traditional game. Urbanization and globalization. So these are some of the various threats, but it has got its impact to sports too. And loss of open spaces, playgrounds, influence of global sports, reducing the cultural game and visibility. Economic and technological factors. The commercialized sports attract more investment and viewership. Online gaming and virtual entertainment replacing the physical activity. Cultural identity erosion. Traditional games are at risk due to the global cultural homogenization and loss of historical and regional uniqueness. So these are some of the challenges ahead of us in the promotion of traditional games. It is that we have to have some collective wisdom to find a way that we can tide over it or we can find effective solutions. So this is out of these factors, both ignoring the sports, some of the ramifications or the aftermath which has come is that which I would like to highlight, that 80% of the children are at risk of disease of physical inactivity. And it's a fact that the people without the knowledge of the past or the history and origin and culture is likely to be a tree without the root. This is a quote by Marcus Garvey. So 1 point is a global scenario. If you take 1.8 billion adults are physically inactive worldwide. Nations are off the track to meet the global target of 15% reduction in the physical activity by 2030 relative to 2010. And we have set the target, we are finding it hard to do achieve these targets. 81% of the kids aged 11 to 17 are having not enough of active enough. And regular physical education classes encouraging movement throughout the schools, putting fun back into the sports are some of the solutions. So we need to find out both regional level and global level solutions, how to address these major challenges, threats which you are confronting. I think this slide is quite familiar to many of you that, this is the cycle, how the inactivity as a deadly cycle can affect each and every stages of growth, starting from the kids, from the early stage of, then later to the adulthood, and then the adolescence. So you can see that there are disastrous consequences, including 5.3 million premature death reported from the US statistics, and almost the same. I have got this is what is in India, about how that 54% of the Indians are physically inactive and less than 10% engage in recreational physical activity. And out of this is what the aftermath and the sort of consequences which has brought, which has necessitated for us to invest more into sports and make the youth more pro sports friendly. So this, I think I need not to explain much. This learned audience are much aware about all these facts, how the physical and psychological benefits of indigenous games. Almost all the benefits games of modern sports, indigenous games do have. And it from maybe be it cognitive skill development, social motor, problem solving, out of box thinking, cultural awareness, physical fitness, leadership, and all. These all are the benefits of traditional games too. So we have made certain measures. The government of India, under the initiative of our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, like Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat. As I have told you, we had the largest ever budget allocation the current year to the field of sports, out of which $135 million have been earmarked for Khelo India scheme alone, which has got this indigenous sports and tribal games to be promoted. This comes under the vision Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat of Honorable Prime Minister of India. So this is our modern and new, the Khelo India, how it is being shaped. You can see that all the verticals, including playfield development, community coaching, state Khelo India Center, annual sports competitions, talent search development, utilization of and creation of upgradation of sports infrastructure. So all important segments of sports development has been taken care in this Khelo India scheme. And we have got different Khelo India games, meant even for the youth, for the universities, for the winter games, and women, and so on. So we have different Khelo India games, and lucrative budgetary provisions are earmarked for each and every sector, so that we could rather make sports more participatory and broad-base it, making every Indian, every kid, every youth to take part, giving them opportunity to access sports at each and every level. So the contribution through Khelo India, through this our program, is that we could recognize and promote indigenous games like Malcolm. I hope many of the international experts would not have seen this Kalaripayat and Malcolm. Had it been in Kerala, or maybe the next time we have there, we would like to show this or make it a demonstration so that you can see it, or you can search the net and you can find how the Malcolm is performed. Kalaripayattu, Gadka, Thangta, Silambam are recognized and supported. Now the government of India has officially recognized these games, and we are supporting it. Tribal games, also we are got a dedicated Khelo India tribal games for archery, promotion of archery, kabaddi, kho-kho at the regional level. And infrastructure and financial support, training centers, financial aid, and competitive opportunity for tribal and youth also being specially given. Capacity building program also planned, cultural economic impact also being looked into. So we are trying to look into all these key areas. And the conclusion is that, the government's role. The government plays a very crucial role in sports governance due to strong link between sports and national pride. I don't know how much it is popular in many other countries. It would not be. But in India, it's necessary, because it's only through the government side we would be able to support and develop the sports, and government plays a very crucial role to make the country strong in sports too. The indigenous sports revival, the launch of Pro Kabaddi League. We have now we have launched Pro Kabaddi League, and Kho-Kho World Cup. The World Kho-Kho Games have been introduced. So these are some of the steps we are taking to promote the indigenous games. And if any of the experts who have come from different parts of the world, they are interested, we can get yourself linked to these organizations of these games, and this can be made accessible to the youth of your respective country too. Youth participation, a significant number of rural youth, comprising of 20% of India's youth population. You know that we have a large youth population. About 20% of the youth population engage in traditional athletic events, in the traditional games. But we need to increase from this 20% furthermore. And regional sports diversity, while kabaddi, kho are widely popular, the other indigenous like boat racing, in Kerala especially, you would have heard about snake boat racing. We have the snake boat racing, which is the only one in the all over the world and very famous. A Nehru Trophy boat race is there. You can search in the net, you can find it. Very interesting, around 100 odd horsemen comes in a snake-shaped boat, and the racing is being held. For growing strength of that, we have got an Alapi Water Sports Center where in the same place we have already started a world-class water sports center, and we are getting much of the talents from these world water sports events coming up to the modern sports too. I am telling that how we are linking the modern and the old traditional games and modern sports, so that we can make the youth of the country to have opportunity to of their traditional games as a positive factor to take on the modern games too. Likewise, also we have that in a center in Talasheri, where and also where we train in modern fencing, and this is out of Kalaripayat. This most of the movements there are of same in both. So we have got some institute to train fencers and to get the talents out of Kalari and other martial arts to do so. And lastly, you know, the economic impact. You know that the contribution of sports towards the economy of every country is about 5%. We are only out now with 0.5%, and 5% of the GDP. And now India becoming the third largest economy in the world, going to become, or maybe we are the fifth now, we are going to become the third largest economy in the world. So it is imperative that we also we also put in to invest through sports, so that we can raise that 0.05 GDP to 5% GDP, making India one of the largest economic power in the world. So that is how we conclude, and I hope it would have been made some thoughts to you also, for the international delegates, on how all the countries wherever you are coming from, maybe also having some indigenous games and sports. It applies to you also, your own respective indigenous game. We need to promote those indigenous games in the rest of the world, prevalent in the many parts of the world, as we do in India, as we are trying. And also the Indian sports are also open, that you can also propagate in your own countries to make it the world youth, the youth of the all different part of the world can also derive the benefits of these games, which are prevalent in India, which is the largest population in the world. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Hello. Thank you, sir, for highlighting the key aspect and key important area, indigenous sports and traditional games. I think it's a need of the hour, where especially we understand the traditional games was the key aspects for developing our motor skills and fundamental skills, that is. And the key reason what I feel is that our movements are lacking, that is because of lack of physical activity, and it's a challenge. And so thanks, sir, for highlighting the key aspects. Now the floor is open for a question and answers. We can take some question and answers.
Thank you. My name is Jens Andersen. I'm from Play the Game. It was a highly enlightening lecture, and thanks for providing some knowledge that we from abroad, I can speak for myself, I don't have much insight into these issues. This issue about, you mentioned an amount of 135 million US dollars. It may be a growing amount, and it may be much more than before, but it's still not a very big amount for 1.4 billion people if you want to invest both in Olympic success and in grassroots sports, massification of sport. The traditional Olympic sport, or the classic Olympic sports, they have, I suppose, the advantage of having a federation structure that is recognizable internationally, they also have the leverage of the Olympic dreams, the dreams of hosting the Olympics of India. So they would have, I assume, a stronger position of getting their share of the 135 million US dollars. How are the traditional games organized? Are there any considerations of that they join forces in federation, or is a federation type system not really relevant for them? I would really like to because it is also very much about money if you want to, let's say, sport more and traditional games more accessible for such a big population.
Thank you very much. Very pertinent question. See, I have told about 135 million US dollars into only one segment. It's not the total budget. We have got total budget is around 3,800 crores, and this 1,000 crores are just meant for only for Khelo India. Our total budget is 3,800 crores, which is the total budget of. So it's not, we know that it is not insufficient for the country, so it's such a vast population. But this is also each state government, like we have it's a republic of various states. So each state government have its own share of budget. Again, other than this central budget, this is only the central budget. The state governments also earmark budget for the respective states. So it is apart from that, this fund is coming, and this 1,000 is meant for Khelo India, 1,135 million dollars. That's what you're quite right that it would be quite insufficient if you take into the total population. Secondly, about your second part of the question, that how we are linking with the national federations. We have got the Indian Olympic Association, with this umbrella body of all the getting linked to the International Olympic Committee, IOC, at continental and world level. So all these kabaddi, kho-kho, kalari, all of them have got their own respective federations. They have formed these federations, and these federations, most of them, they are affiliated to the Indian Olympic Association, and the Indian Olympic Association is recognized by the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs. So that is the link which we have from the government level to the Indian Olympic Association, and to the National Federation. All the indigenous games have their own respective federations, their own respective federation at the national level, associations at the state level, and also their district units. So that is how we percolate down from the top to the nook and corner of the country. And that is how we, the structure, the organizational structure is. I hope it's clear.
Hello? Okay, it's wrong now. Congratulations for your presentation. Very interesting to see how you are working with the indigenous games here in India. Well, I have some questions. First, I don't know very well the Indian culture. How the indigenous peoples, do they live outside of the city, or they are in the city? They have special lands. Like in Brazil, some of them are live in special lands, and they are not in the cities. Some of them move to the cities. Our second question is about the meaning of these games. Each game has a different meaning in different culture, in different ethnic group. And when you bring to the city, not to be forgotten, how do you work with this meaning? Do they signify? That's what I think they try to signify the meaning, because people in the city, they don't know. I mean, they can play the games, but they don't understand the meaning, and how you deal with the meaning that is in the culture, in those tribes, and in the cities.
Okay, see this, as you, I will just have a quote of Mahatma Gandhi. He has told that India lives in the villages, in their villages. So we have a vast rural area. But one aspect of urbanization also is the major global factor is also there in India. There's urbanization is rapidly going on, but we have a lot of rural area and villages all over the country. So we have got a local self-government system which looks into the governance of the rural areas. We have got called as panchayats. We have got district panchayat, block panchayat, gram panchayat, and there are sarpanch, means the one who is looking after the panchayats. So there is a governance system which is percolating through the local self-governments, which looks into the rural areas of villages and the municipalities, the corporation. Municipality and corporation comes to the urban, but when it goes to the panchayat, it goes to the rural area. It deals with the village. And there are wards in the village. The wards, there are members, the elected representatives. They go, elects a president, there is a president. That is the way in which the governance is done at the rural level in India. So there also, in the block level and the panchayat level, at the rural level, the sports, the promotion of sports is a part of the social sector activities. So they have got the sports, and what we are now advocating them is that they should also give emphasis to the traditional sports, of which hails from that respective areas. Like if it is in south of India, in the south, there is certain traditional games of ours when it come to Kerala. If you go to Manipur, we have got where this national sports universities. There are certain traditional games which are prevalent in Manipur. I mentioned about Thangta. Thangta is from Manipur. Kalari is from Kerala. And so the cultural diversity, the diversity has given rise to different types of sports prevailing in these places. So it is the respective state governments as well as the union government have got initiatives, schemes to promote them at the rural level as well as at the national level. That is how it works. And about your question at the second question, I am not very clear. Can you once again repeat it?
Yes, when you bring the when you when you bring the games to the city, you don't bring the meaning, the signification. The signification is there in the culture, in the local culture, and that's something hard. You just play the games, but you don't play the meaning. You don't understand the meaning of the games that is there inherited in the city, in the tribe or in the local community. And then how you can work with this different of a meaning, and people from the cities, they are just play the games, or they try to understand and then try to feel better what's the meaning in the tribes, in the communities.
Very relevant question. This is how we need to address to how that whatever is the value of that sport, the traditional sport, the contribution of sports should be made aware to the people of the respective area. That is what I think you are meaning. So I think this Khelo India initiative is one amongst those where we are trying to promote it at the rural level, to make it known the values of that sports, the contribution of the traditional games to the people of those areas where it is prevalent, as well as we are going to, as you told, at the cities, at the urban area. Also, we are organizing the traditional games. We have got an exclusive rural sports competitions for the traditional games alone, which will happen a national level competition where all the state governments, all the state teams comes and participate. So that gives a venue for at the national level, at the cities, at the metros, for these games to be promoted. So that is how we are trying to address this course. But even then it is insufficient. We need to take additional steps also to make it further more broad-based.
Yes, we can take one more question. So.
Thank you very much for this very rich presentation. I'm Jorge Kiniznik from Western Sydney University. Yeah, I pretty much enjoyed how you started your presentation with the philosophical background of your work, cited several people, including John Dewey, who also said that education is the midwife of democracy. And I think this is kind of important. And I think kabaddi would be very useful for you in New Zealand. I am self-appointing myself as the kabaddi ambassador in Australia for the future.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful.
But my question is that before my question, just one comment about Jens' question is that I think we should be very careful in trying to mimicking and putting all the traditional sports in the same governance structure as the Olympic sports or the modern sports. I think they have another perspective, another holistic way to empower communities rather than being such a global thing. And that's the way I think that leads to my question. I'd like just to see whether you guys here in India are doing some sort of ethnographic research to understand how the young people who are playing yesterday, we met a few of them here, who are playing the traditional sports, they navigate between tradition and the commodification of these sports within professional leagues and things like that. Thank you very much.
So like you told, it may not be practically possible for every traditional game to become an Olympic event. You are right, at a holistic approach, and maybe the priorities or the qualifications or the merits required for an Olympic QR would be different. But there are certain traditional games which has got the merits of getting into an Olympic sport. Only if it is, qualifies or if fulfills those requirements which are mandatory, which by the IOC, then only it should be. So our concern is that if some of the sports have got the merits, the qualifications required for becoming an Olympic sports, it may not be deprived. So that is only our concern, and it reckons it. We will strictly adhere to the qualifications and the merits, whatever is the standards fixed, and if it qualifies those standards, then it should not be deprived too. That's what our contention is. And at the local level, as you pointed out, there is a larger scale, larger activities like Kabaddi. We need to promote. We have Pro Kabaddi League now. It is one of the biggest mentor of Kabaddi in India is our illustrious, most accredited film actor Amitabh Bachchan. He himself is promoting Kabaddi in India. He's a brand ambassador for Kabaddi. So they are trying to propagate this game further. So we would like that these games are also propagated nationally and also internationally. Thanks that you have taken up this Kabaddi initiative. We'll support you.
Yes, I thank all the audiences for your questions. Yes, we can take the last question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I want to ask one question, like how it pass on our future. Like for this traditional sports, we don't have that much of facilities or some academy for teaching or pass on that in future. How it preserve, like Thangta in Manipur, not only Thangta and other traditional sports also is there. But nowadays, only the Thangta was popular. But what about other sports?
No, that is why I told that we need concerted efforts. First of all, you have to, be proud of this discipline. Please sit down. That the respective each game has got its own importance, and it has its own background. You need to, if it is Thangta or any other sports, you feel that it is not promoted based on, what it deserves. That we need to put on efforts and highlight. You are studying for which course? MP. Acha. You are doing a research thesis? Are you doing a thesis?
Yes, sir.
So, what we try to encourage is you should take, if some of the areas you find that these areas are not properly explored, you can take research in that. Especially in Kalari, Thangda, there is enough scope of doing research to find out the scientific contents. Unless you people, young research scholars, you take up research in these areas and reveal, and then only you have to pay an effort. You have to put in some additional effort to propagate from your side also. But government side, definitely we'll try our best. Government is already trying, and we are trying. And if you find that any of that, like you told that Thangta is developed, but there are many other sports also which deserves more promotion but not done. In that case, you take it as a case study. You speak to Usha madam. Usha madam will definitely support to get you into it, and we'll also try to. Government of India also have many schemes to promote such games. Thank you,
sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Actually, I'm doing a research in traditional sports of Manipur. And then, like, Thangta is also one of the sports that we are taking in the research. And then, like, other sports like Mugna, and then this is a type of Manipuri wrestling. And then, like, Hiang Tanaba, like boat racing, sir, which you have also told about, like snake boating in Kerala. So, like, we have these other sports also. But these other sports are not getting into highlight. Like that we have seen in Thangta. So what can we do so that we can preserve other traditional sports? Because these traditional sports, like when I do the research, like it is not having proper institute or setup. So in order to preserve, what can we do, sir?
So you see that what can initially it has to be done at the local level. Wherever you feel like that these type of sports are prevalent, you need to highlight it before the local government. Maybe it may be a local body, as I have told. Maybe it may be a panchayat, it may be a municipality. So you have to take it up with them to make at least local tournaments organized. Then make an organization. If there is no association or organization formed to promote that, you have to you should take the leadership. You people, young researchers, you should take the leadership of making an organization for promoting that game. You become yourself the first president or secretary, and start promoting it. Have the networking done with the different other similar places where there is some scope of this game to be promoted. Have some people appointed there as a part of your association to promote. Link with the state government, link with the local self-government. And then there is a scheme through which you can get the aid of Government of India for promotion of indigenous game. As you can take up through that channel, and gradually once you enlarge its participation, people who are participating and people who are competing, it will gradually take into the list of your at least to the state level sports, indigenous sports, and from state you can come to the next level of getting into recognition to the national level. That would be the ladder, the channel through which you can promote it to the higher levels. Definitely it's an area you have taken up a very nice question. I appreciate both of you. This is a very a pertinent area where you can contribute. You can take leadership and promote, and you can become leaders of these respective games which are lying low now and having no men to mentor or promote. And you can take the leadership, but it requires extra efforts. You need to do and go out of the way. You have to go put the extra mile to promote it. You have to go in normal work. You need to take on that initiative and take leadership to promote it further. Anything we can do, let us know. We'll be try to help you out.
Yes. Thank you, audiences, for your questions. And thank you, sir, for answering all the questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful presentation, taking us through the various verticals of Kalo India, as well as giving us an overview of education system in India, ancient and also traditional sports. So as a token of appreciation, I would like to invite Dr. Shyam Sundar Rath. I'm so sorry, I didn't see. So I would like to invite Professor Usha S. Nair, Madam, to kindly give a token of appreciation to Kishore Sir, a traditional Lengyan of Manipur, and a Shanghai as a memento. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. There are two announcements. The poster presentation scientific committee has been listed. Professor Rosa Lopez, Claire Bauzier, Dr. Shyam Sundar Rath, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, Dr. Vinay Kumar Singh, and Dr. Harish Kumar Tiwari. We would like to request all the poster presenters to kindly move to the section of the presentation, and we would like the scientific committee to kindly evaluate their posters and provide your results. There is one more announcement. On the first day, there were 3 international delegates who couldn't make payments due to the transfer of dollars. So we would request Professor Ki Ying Hua, Dr. Maria Datako, and Dr. Martin Sharmila Carroll to kindly head to the registration counter for payment of registration fees. Thank you. Now we'll continue with the session.
Thank you. We now have our fourth presentation for today. We have Professor Mark King, and his topic is Understanding is Critical to Using Technology Effectively when Maximizing Sports Performance. Over to Professor Mark King.
Okay, thank you to the organisers for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully I'm going to talk about a topic that will interest many of you in the audience. Technology in sport is here to stay, and I'm going to be talking about how we can hopefully use that in a positive way. Okay, so you see some examples here of technology in sport at the bottom, from Australian Open and open pose estimation of skeletal tracking through to IMUs, catapult and laboratory settings. So these are just some examples of technology in sport. We've got the laboratory through to single camera, multi-camera stadium systems, through to accelerometers, IMUs. And the challenge for all of us here is what information is useful and will help. There's a real danger of overload of information that actually doesn't actually help anything at all. And so during this presentation, we're going to discuss that. Well, I'm a biomechanist, and some of you may not know what biomechanics is. It's part of sports sciences. And I use mathematics to get a mechanical understanding of sport. And the critical word there for me is understanding. And I'm looking for factors that are important in sport from both a performance and injury perspective. We often want to maximize performance and minimize injury risk. And if I pull all of that together and use mechanics, my philosophy, and I'm not necessarily a philosopher, would be that in elite sport, there are some factors that are critical to achieve elite performance, and there are lots of other things that makes us different. And those factors are less important, and we shouldn't be worrying about those. They're our individuality. Everybody's different. But from a mechanical and a biomechanist perspective, I'm looking for what are those factors that are critical to performance, because those are the factors that we need to understand. So in this presentation, I'm going to take us on a journey from research through to implementation. And I'm going to start with the example of cricket fast bowling, which hopefully we haven't actually heard much about cricket in this conference, so I'm going to put that to rights here. I'm going to talk about things from both an experimental and a theoretical perspective in biomechanics. And then through to the implementation. How can we use that information in a positive way? And then finally, if we've got time, my own passion. I'm a badminton player. I'm going to finish off with something on racket sports, if the chairs allow me. Okay, oh, we're going back. We've gone too far. So, Mark Wood here bowling around 160 kilometers an hour, 100 miles an hour. I'd love to be able to do that. I'm sure everybody in the audience who plays cricket would love to be able to do that, but we can't. And as a biomechanist, I want to understand why he can do that and we can't, and how for the next generation, what we can learn from this to help them. Here's two examples of bowlers at Loughborough. The bowler on the right is similar to Mark Wood, bowling close to 100 miles an hour. The bowler on the left is somewhat slower and can get nowhere near that. And can we understand why, and what can we learn from that? Because the bowler on the left would clearly love to be able to bowl faster. But also from an injury perspective, take these two shapes, one at back foot contact, one at front foot contact. Why is one of these bowlers considerably more likely to get a stress fracture in his lower back? And can we understand that and then use that to help coaching in the future? because what all cricketers or all people in sport hate is to see people get injured. So understanding is needed. And when we want to start to think about understanding, we're talking about research, and with research we need good questions. So simply from a performance perspective, what factors characterize the fastest bowlers? Can we understand and explain and then use that information? And then similarly from an injury perspective, although injuries are multifactorial, and we could talk about workload or nutrition, but from a biomechanical perspective, what technique factors might be linked to injury risk? Well, if I take you to Loughborough, where I'm from, this is what the National Cricket Performance Centre looks like from time to time when I turn it into a biomechanics lab. Lots of cameras, essentially there to record what people do. Or we've got a new laboratory after the 2012 Olympics. We were fortunate to get investment as an Olympic legacy project, so we now have our own laboratory to look at things as well. Well, the gold standard in biomechanics to track human movement, and technology is moving on, but it's still the gold standard now, is to essentially track reflective markers stuck on the body. And the keen eye in the audience will notice that this is one of the best bowlers in the world, or was. And what do we ask them to do? Very simply, we ask them to bowl. So with all those markers stuck on, not quite playing in a test match final, but we ask them to bowl. But what do we see? We accurately track how those markers move on the body. And that's the important thing. And the reason we've put these markers on the body is we can't track human movement as accurately as we want without them. So we see how the markers move. And because we've placed these markers carefully, we know then where the human body is under those markers. So we can replace the markers with a skeletal image. And from there, we know then, with a good degree of accuracy and confidence, how the human body's moved during that movement. And yet we can put it in whatever environment we want. So we repeat this for lots of bowlers. And again, the keen eye might recognize this bowling action. An English player. I'll ask you later if you know. And so we've got this large data set. So what can we do with that? What information can we glean from that that might be useful for others? That's our starting point. Well, anyone who knows me well knows I hate statistics. But with data, it's inevitable that we use statistics. And the reason I don't like statistics as much as others is it gives an understanding, but it doesn't give a full understanding. So it says on average, these people will be better because, but that doesn't necessarily explain why. And as a biomechanist, I want to get to the bottom of that, and you'll see how I do that later. But statistics has a value, and so with a large data set, we can look at that data set and try and answer our questions. Well, if we take that large data set of elite performers and said, on average, what do the better ones do, the ones that bowl faster, the first variable that comes out is that the better ones run up a bit quicker. So speed is an important variable to bowling fast. And this isn't unsurprising, as the energy of the run-up is used to generate ball speed. It's converted into ball speed, if you like. The second one, if we looked at these two bowlers, the bowler on the right bowls faster because he's delayed his bowling arm. So you can see the position of his arm at front foot contact is less far through the bowling action. He's now got a bigger range of motion before ball release, because both will release the ball in a similar position, and the bowler on the right will bowl quicker. So that was the second factor that came out. The third factor is to use how the body is used to convert that run-up speed into ball speed. And good bowlers use their trunk as part of that important mechanism. So they drive their trunk through and leave their bowling arm behind them. So they don't pull their arm through, in essence. So they're not throwing the ball, they're bowling the ball. And the final factor is around that efficient transfer of energy and momentum from the run-up through to bowling. So the bowler on the left collapses. You can see it ball release. He's collapsed his front knee. He's lost energy to the system. Whereas the bowler on the right has transferred that run-up speed and the energy that's produced through his body, through his leg, through his trunk, into the arm. And so he bowls much faster. So these 4 factors, very simple factors, can explain the majority of the variance in ball speed across an elite data set. So although all the bowlers bowl a bit differently, they all typically have most of these traits. So if we now look back at this video of the slower bowler on the left and the faster bowler on the right, you'll start to see the bowler on the left has collapsed, the bowler on the right has braced his front leg. If I can go back, we'll go see if we can go back, hang on, play it again. The bowler on the right has used his trunk effectively with his front leg to produce that momentum. Well, if we were to look at one particular factor that showed the effectiveness of the bowling action, and coaches often think about shapes. This shape of ball release, comparing the slower bowler and the faster bowler, shows that this shoulder angle is the indicative factor of a good fast bowling action. So the bowler on the left is almost using his muscles to pull his arm through, and that shoulder angle is smaller. The bowler on the right is used the momentum of the run-up through his leg, through his trunk, and left the bowling arm behind. And so we have a much bigger angle there. And this one factor on its own, although it's not why they bowl fast, it shows the effectiveness of a good bowling action. Well, that's statistics. And I said I don't like statistics. What I like is equations, I like forces and Newton's second law. Well, if I use that, and I'm not going to show you any equations, I can produce a computer model of an athlete and then make it specific to an athlete and then use that model mechanically to understand and explain what's happening. And this is called theoretical biomechanics. So this is a picture or a representation of a bowler. It's a computer model. It's like a computer game, but it's realistic to an athlete. Well, when we produce a model, we have to firstly show that it works. Else it becomes a computer game that's nonsensical. So here's the model on the right reproducing the bowling action of one of the bowlers in the study. And there's close agreement between these two. So I now have confidence that the model is working. It's not Superman. It's a fast bowler. So now I don't need the human. I can get rid of the human and then say, okay, to the model, how do you bowl fast? Within the constraints of the human body, your constraints, what would you do? What would you choose to do? And so I've got a stick figure representation here. The performance is represented at the top. What the computer chose is represented at the bottom. And how does that compare to what I found experimentally? Well, the first thing we notice is the bowling arm is delayed. The computer chose to do that. We didn't tell it to do that. It thought, to bowl faster, I'm going to delay my bowling arm. Well, that's common with what we found experimentally. Although there's not much difference, the leg is straighter at ball release or around ball release. The trunk has driven through more in the optimum solution compared to what the bowler did. So those factors are the same. But the model also found some things a bit different, but make sense. In the optimum solution, you can see the front arm is much higher at the beginning of the bowling action. The bowler we had in our study was a bit lazy. But across our experimental data set, there wasn't enough statistical power to find that. But mechanically, we can understand it. And then lastly, the rear leg was driven through more in the model. All of these mechanically make sense and support what we found experimentally. So as well as a statistical relationship, we've also now got a mechanical understanding. And that is quite powerful. So we've answered our first question about performance. What about from an injury perspective? Well, injuries are much harder, and we've only got the experimental side of this equation at the moment, and we're working on the theoretical side at the moment. So stress fractures occur L4, L5. And take these two pictures here. So this is at back foot contact. Before we did this study, we wouldn't know which of these bowling actions is more likely to get injured. But from the research we did with a large data set and tracking players over time, the bowler on the left from our data set is far more likely to get injured from a statistical perspective. This this hip angle and knee angle at back foot contact is more flexed, and that's been linked to injury. The mechanism isn't fully understood. And then again, at front foot contact, the bowler on the left here has a more hyperextended lower back. It's hard to see from video, but we can measure that in the laboratory. And putting those two factors alone across a data set of over 50 fast bowlers tracked over time, nearly 90% of the stress fractures were explained. So in other words, just these two shapes was linked very highly to getting a stress fracture. And so we can use this information now in our coaching to say, okay, if we've got a bowler that looks like the one on the left, perhaps we might be able to encourage him to be a bit straighter, a bit more upright at back foot contact, and again, perhaps a bit less hyperextended at front foot contact. Neither of these factors are thought to limit performance, which is critical, but are linked to injury. So we have some understanding now. We've got some understanding of what good looks like from a fast bowling perspective. Well, how do we use that information? Well, we could bring a bowler to the laboratory. In fact, the England and Wales Cricket Board last year funded for 50 of the high potential bowlers in the UK to come to the lab to be tested and use that as core to their multidisciplinary team approach to then try and help those bowlers improve. And if we do that, what does it look like? Well, we can profile against what we know good looks like. Where does the individual bowler sit? So we've got from run-up speed to shoulder angle at ball release, trunk flexion, all the things I've just spoke about. We can benchmark up against our data set. And there's an individual one, that's shoulder angle at ball release. Where does this individual compare to our elite data set? And the same from an injury perspective. So that's technology being used. There's a problem with that. It's certainly expensive, and it's definitely not available to all, and it's not scalable. So if I came to India and saying everybody's come to a lab if they want to be a better fast bowler, that's not really a solution that's viable. What could we do instead? Well, England and Wales Cricket Board, ECB, part of their strategy was to disseminate this information. So they put out these nice infographics, put it out on Sky during a test match to hopefully the cricket audience in the UK and broader. See, these are the attributes they're looking for, all of which came from the research I've just shown you. So that's one way, and that was the ECB's part of their strategy. But then for myself, it was saying, okay, how can we take the laboratory to the field? With current technology, is that possible? And what would that look like? And what can we achieve? So a field-based solution. So I'm going to use cricket again. Everyone's got a smartphone probably in this room. That'd be a fair guess. Can we use smartphones that are far better and technology is far better than certainly when I did my PhD a long time ago with darkened rooms and cine film? So video would be the input, not requiring hardware at all beyond what people already have. So a smartphone-based solution. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Chennai at their laboratory, and although we recorded people with lots of cameras, we also took 2 smartphone recordings. So you can lose the volume. So we've got a rear view. You can switch the volume down on that, and also a side view. So this was one of their bowlers, through their team there in Chennai. The next day, so I did a workshop on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I then presented the results back. So a smartphone-based solution across all the areas of importance, which you can see there on the right, and we'll look at in more detail. And the critical thing for me as a biomechanist is to understand what I can do, but also what I can't do from a smartphone recording. I can't get the level of accuracy I can in the laboratory. That is unrealistic with current technologies. So I need to be careful, but also try and understand what information is useful. So I've worked with high-performance coaches in developing this. So what does it look like? It's called PaceFlow, and this is your dashboard you get from bowling like you've just seen. From an overall performance, legality is unique to cricket, but we don't want to see bowlers chucking. Performance and injury risk, and then run-up, prep, and delivery. And then at the bottom, where might a coach focus their attention. So this is a product to support coaching. It doesn't take away the importance of coaching, but it supports coaching, and that's important. Well, running through what does it look like, just some screenshots. So the two videos that input, you just saw those in the presentation. You get a sequence at the bottom. Legality. So this bowler had a little bit of risk that he was chucking. So we politely presented that back to him. Through to his overall performance, taking all of the metrics you saw before, but not giving you numbers, but telling you throughout the phase, and it's small at the bottom there, but his run-up was quite good, but the other areas of his bowling action, there was definitely some areas for improvement. Again, from an injury risk perspective, from the research, but also from elite coaching, because we don't understand everything about injuries. So what does his run-up, prep and delivery look like? Then, from his run-up, and if we zoom in a bit on what's in there, we can see where every foot contact is quite nicely, and then we can look at it from above. Information that you perhaps wouldn't expect to be possible from just 2 video recordings, but we can do that. And then through to preparation, the same thing, and delivery. And we pulled all that together and say, okay, we could just do that. That's a profile of a player, but actually we can probably go one step further, which is to pull that together and to say, okay, what would a coach work on from a run-up to prep to delivery phase? Again, I'm not providing any numbers here because they're all in the background. Coaches don't necessarily like numbers. They just want to know what to do. And then this guides a coach, and so it makes it very practical as to what can be used in the field. So where are we currently with that? To me, it's around understanding, translation, and implementation. From a biomechanist, doing the science, through to then working out what is important, and then providing that back to the coach or using technology with the goal of improving technique, improving performance, and minimizing injury risk. Okay, if I've got time, I think I have, we'll move on to my example in racket sports. So I'm a badminton player. So I can't bowl at 100 miles an hour, 160 kilometers an hour, and unfortunately I can't smash over at 400 kilometers an hour. And anyone who plays the sport would love to smash faster, just like bowl faster in cricket. Well, here's 2 of the national squad. We set up, you can see all the cameras that you're familiar with. This chap was top 10 in the world in his day, and he couldn't smash over 400 kilometers an hour. And it probably stopped him being top 5 in the world. Here's our top singles player. Again, although he was quite accurate with his smash, it wasn't as powerful as, say, 400 kilometers an hour plus. So, we'll start with a question. Could these international players smash faster? If you were their coach, would you think they could, or is that their limit? There's no point trying to coach someone to be when they're already at their limit. Can we understand what that good looks like now in a different task? So we went to the All England Champs, which is the biggest badminton tournament in the world beyond the Olympics, and we were fortunate enough to get data on some of the best players in the world, as well as our top national players. So this player from Chinese Taipei was top 3 in the world. So we get good data, also as well with all the national squad in England, both male and female. And we went through the same process that I showed you for cricket. So we start with this elite data set, 3D dot the dot for my students, working out where each of those markers is, where we've placed it on the body, through to dropping a skeleton on. So again, now in the badminton smash, we can do some statistics and work out what good looks like from all of that data. Where does that speed come from? Well, if you remember in cricket, it came from the torso. Yes, there was a run-up, which is different to the smash, but it came from the center of the body. It wasn't just the arm. And you can see in these colors that again in the smash, it's the same. Well, if we look at that individually, I'll put some graphs in because it's not all pictures. So this is X factor. So this is how the trunk twists, shoulders relative to hips, which has been looked at a lot in golf. And essentially, we've got time during the movement on the horizontal axis, and we've got the X factor on the bottom. And this is the whole data set. And then if we just look at the fastest and slowest, what we find is the quickest, which is the solid line here, has more counter rotation. So there's greater range of motion of their trunk, which makes sense, and it's linked to what we found in other sports. So one factor is linked to the trunk. Then look at shoulder internal rotation. Everyone's heard of that in tennis probably, but again, here's our data set. And then if we pick out the slowest and fastest, so the fastest is the solid line, the dotted line is the slowest in the study, the people who smash faster have a greater range of shoulder internal rotation at contact. And you can see the steepness of the line here on the right-hand side. So they're just two factors, and we could pull out more, but just for today, that would be enough. And then if we look at the consequence of that on racket head speed, which ultimately means smashing fast, this is the build-up of racket head speed during the movement. And if we compare the fast and slow on the right-hand side from the data on the left, you see that the slower player, the dotted line, starts their acceleration earlier, probably around late 70s of the percent through the movement. The person who smashes much faster leaves that much later. Is more like 90% of the way through the movement. They're more powerful. They're able to generate speed more quickly. The slower player, the dotted line, is desperate to smash fast, so he starts his forward movement quicker, but doesn't get anywhere near as fast. So this rapid acceleration in a short period of time is critical. Well, if we look at the data set for elite male versus elite female, what does that look like? Here's the elite data set for males, and here's for the females. And if we put those two together, an elite female smashes perhaps 20% slower than an elite male. And just for fun, I put my data on, and I was just better than the average elite female player, just for fun. So that was the reason, and I always knew it. The reason I couldn't, and that's why we did some of this work, was to find out why I couldn't smash faster. It's too late for me now, unfortunately. But anyway, there we go. Okay, so I've told you lots about the smash. Martin knows we've got a question. So the question is here. So this is a separate elite data set from Malaysia. I've worked in collaboration with them. This is the fastest and the slowest in that study. Question for you, which is faster? Is it A or is it B? I'll give you 5 seconds to think, and then I'm going to ask you to put your hands up. Commit an answer. Who smashes faster? Is it A or is it B? Okay, hands up if you think A. Okay, hands up if you think B. Okay, well, the answer is A. So, those who got A are allowed their lunch. Those who got B have got more homework to do. Well, if the keen eye might look at the next to last graphic and look at the racket position. B has started their forward movement. It's hard to tell from a still, I admit, too early. He's desperate to smash as fast as the one at the top. The one at the top, it's left it very, very late because he's got to go from that position through to a similar position at contact in a much shorter period of time. So B is the slower one, A is the faster one. So hopefully what I've tried to do in this presentation is showed you that understanding is critical. I've given you 2 examples, one in cricket, one in badminton. If I was to summarize all of that in one sentence, it would be a science-led approach using technology to help more people reach their potential and enjoy sport in an inclusive way. And hopefully that fits the mantra of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and you were spot on time as well. How we can use technology to improve performance, maximize technique, but more and equally important, minimize injury, especially when we talk about fast bowlers. And I think this is important if we can target the young fast bowlers so that at the early age, when they are now developing their technique, so that they're moving into the future, they don't, their careers are not hampered by threatening technique problems. So I want to open the floor now for some questions and comments to Mark. And before anyone, was it Jofra?
Who?
The English fast bowler, was it Jofra?
It was Jimmy Anderson.
Okay. Okay. Go.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. My name is Takashi Fukushima from Tokyo Gakuin University and Technical University of Munich. And I'm actually a half scientist and half software engineer, and this is exactly my study field of study. And I have a bunch of questions, and but I picked two of them. And the first question is, so what's the future direction of sports technology? I know like sports technology is evolving really, really fast, and I want to know the future direction and like how the biomechanical analysis is like changing. And the second question is like as a software engineer, like what's the ideal like a collaboration like among like a trainers, like a scientist like you and the software engineering to develop the like useful applications? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll try and answer them in turn. So if I was to summarize in a sentence, I think we can change how sport is learnt. So sport at the moment is coached quite traditionally, typically based on expertise of and a good coach has a good level of expertise in their locker room. We can add to that. We're never going to replace it, in my opinion, but we can use technology in a good way so the knowledge that we've gained can be used by coaches so that the next generation of players, and you're absolutely right, it's the young ones. Too often biomechanics has been labelled as the culprit for trying to change someone's action when they've already got an established bowling action, etc. You're never going to do that. You'd be crazy to do that. But the next generation, you can help influence what their natural bowling action is so that it's one that's less likely to cause injury, more likely to be successful. So arguably, I think we can use technology that can be available to all, certainly through smartphones, etc., to change and add in good information and insight to already good coaching practice. So I don't believe that, although we could replace coaches, I think that's the wrong thing to do, because coaching is multifactorial. It's not just technique. It's the individual in front of you, their psychological situation, their S&C, everything else. It's not just one factor. And there's a risk here that you say, we've got all the answers, and technology hasn't. Now, in time, maybe technology will take all of those factors into account. But at this point, it definitely doesn't. So I see technology as supplementing coaching and can change how sport can be learnt as we go forwards. And then your second question about computer scientists and engineers, etc. Ultimately, what we need is collaboration and bring the expertise. I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology, but working together, just like we do to help athletes in a multidisciplinary team, we bring a nutritionist, we bring a biomechanist together. If we now bring in a technologist alongside that, then I think that offers the greatest potential for us to achieve what we want.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was really interesting, and it's great to have some cricket in India as well. You're saying quite a lot, quite rightly, about injury and certainly the risk of injury to young players. Bearing in mind repetitive strain injury and everything else that can come in, what else should these kids be doing to help them avoid injury that is not cricket?
I mean, no, injuries they're difficult. They're multifactorial. So every person's an individual. You can take some elite bowlers that now can only play T20 because their genetics, their bones are brittle, or etc. So it has to be a multidisciplinary approach. And I think there's a danger at the moment that we rush kids too much to specialise too early, because they want to be the next champion. They see a career in this, that, and the other, as opposed to enjoying sport. And we've heard a lot this morning about enjoying sport, playing sport for the right reasons. There's a risk at the moment, this move to professionalisation. Loughborough's as guilty as anywhere. We've set up a national tennis academy, and at 12, 13, the fast track, the top 16 players at 12 or 13 to come and train at Loughborough relocate. Well, there's a lot of pressure there, and I'm pretty sure they're only playing tennis in simple terms. And yes, they might be doing other things from an S&C perspective, but it's professionalizing at the age of 13 or younger. That's quite scary to me. I was someone who played lots of sports, but there are too many single examples of people then achieving success, and everybody then follows that path. And that's hard to compete against in many respects. But we've got to find the right way forward, because all the evidence says do lots of sports for as long as possible and enjoy sport for what it's worth. But parents don't always see that. They see the next Olympic medalist, they see the next world champion, etc. and almost picking it for their kids in many respects, which seems strange as well. So I think there's, it's not a biomechanical debate, it's a more societal debate, but that's what we need to get right.
Well, much appreciated, no? Congratulations. It's not the very first presentation that we see on this topic, but it's for sure one of the most accurate. So congratulations for this. This said, maybe you have some comments or considerations, in the perspective of, well, how all this can be used on a larger scale. Of course, you have already showed some examples on how to disseminate all this. But for sure, also in the future, it's very unlikely that all these will be available for anybody, everybody, even in the most advanced countries. So maybe you can have some comments on how this can be somehow transferred in a large scale. And on one side, on the other side, getting back to those considerations about competition in the view, in one of these views, that is somehow essential, to the potential role of sport for education and pedagogical effects. Maybe I wouldn't be so negative about the fact that families, kids, even adults are so much obsessioned with winning. To some extent, there is a personal interest in performing well without necessarily, competing in the sense of winning or being better than somebody else, but just for the sake and for the pleasure of having a very good technique, applied. And so maybe all this also has a potential for that, because getting closer to perfection, even if you don't compete, is something which might be very encouraging and motivating.
So the first of those two questions. So this is available to anyone in the world. So this is released as an app, essentially. So in theory, anybody in the world could use what we've seen in cricket here, just like I showed in India 2 weeks ago. So it's a commercial product that's available to all, but it's got the right ethos behind it. It's got good science. It's not just opinion-based. So that hopefully addresses your first question to an extent. The second question, so I agree completely, but unfortunately, what I see locally or in the UK is that people see other kids being successful because they've been fast-tracked by lots of coaching, and kids want to win, and they get more enjoyment as a kid through winning. And if they don't win, they don't enjoy it as much. And it's really hard to butt up against that. So the ethos of everybody's right, but kids and their natural behaviour is, I did some coaching, so I coached badminton as well. And I went along to my local grammar school, and they wanted a before school session. And the goal of me for my session there was I wanted all the kids to leave with a smile on their face and want to come back next week. That was it. And one of the kids at the end said, "Oh, that wasn't very good. My other coach makes me do X, Y, Z at 6 o'clock in the morning." And they're 8 or 9 or 10. And this was bananas to me. There was no enjoyment there. It was only about that goal of high performance, even at such a young age. And that's the challenge for us all.
It goes on coaches as well, for this.
Yeah. Just hang on, there's a microphone coming, I think.
Hello, sir. So my question is, can similar analysis be done for the track and field athletes, specifically for 100 and 200 meter, and what kind of mechanism could be deployed?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I've just given you the example of fast bowling here.
Yes.
It was where our data was strongest, but absolutely that scientific understanding from both a performance and injury perspective can be applied to any sport, especially those that have technique as a key element, whereas not gameplay and interaction between players. But technology can be used there as well. So this is very akin to any skill you're trying to do better. So a long jump takeoff, a triple jump, etc., etc. So yes.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a last question for you. So, sir, in cricket, what we say that being perfect mechanically is the best way to avoid injuries and bowl fast. But we have seen many examples in cricket where they are not mechanically perfect, but they are highly successful. For example, we have Lasith Malinga, we have Jasprit Bumrah, who is hyperextension. So there are many examples like that, but they are also prone to injury. I know that Jasprit Bumrah had a bad stress fracture. So till what extent we can mechanically correct them, and till what age we can mechanically correct them?
So to me, it's about natural bowling actions. And before a player gets to a natural bowling action, you've got the opportunity to influence. Now, if you talked about Malinga and Bumrah, if you look at the sort of attributes I showed you here, they don't have all of them, but they still have the majority of them. So to generate pace, fundamentally you have to apply force to a ball. And there's some mechanical attributes behind that. So all of the top players exhibit most of the factors, and we understand that. The danger is that there's a temptation to take someone who's already an elite performer, like those two, and to make a technique change. Well, they'll get worse. It happened to Jimmy Anderson, it happens to examples all over sport. What you've got to do is work with what you've got. What other factors, because injury is multifactorial, can you influence? Maybe it's their nutrition, maybe it's their strength and conditioning program, maybe it's other factors as well. And those are the modifiable risk factors that you can influence. Workload is the biggest, and probably why both of those bowlers got injured was they bowled too much and they didn't get looked after in a multidisciplinary way. And every bowler is different, so the workload for one elite bowler is different to what another bowler can cope with. And we're good enough now to start to understand that, and then to have individualized programs to hopefully allow each player to stay fit on the pitch. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark. And that brings us to the end of this panel, this presentation, for very excellent presentation, thought-provoking, very insightful, and I think it will leave all of us with more questions, and which is what research is all about. So thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation.
As a token of appreciation for the wonderful presentation we had from Mark, I would request Professor Usha Madam to kindly present the Lingyan fee and a memento, which is a sangai, to Professor Mark. Please give a round of applause. Thank you to the chairperson and the co-chairperson. Yeah. May I call upon the chairperson to kindly come forward and receive a token of our appreciation from Professor Usha Madam. A Lingyan fee, which is a traditional Manipuri shawl, and a memento. Yes. May I call upon the co-chairperson to kindly come forward to receive the Lingyan and the memento. May I request all the keynote speakers, if you are here, to come forward for a group photograph. Iftalia. Yeah, Professor Iftalia. The keynote session is over, and now we will have the lunch time. Now it's 1:20.